Name, Li Yan. Status, Heartless Talent, Ancient Martial Arts Specialization, 89% plus 4% Firearms, 38% Skill, Glance of the Phoenix Golden Talisman Domain, Murderous Intent Unlocked,
dilemma not being
Non-Inheritance,
able to spend it all.
Bewitching Spirit
Of
of the
course,
Bird. There's one more important thing.
This Heartless
I
status
need to buy
is
a DS
surprisingly good.
Hematopoietic
Cell Supplement.
Suddenly,
That's
the
the
sound
main
of
reason
idiot.
for this trip.
The sound of
Idiot.
Feeling the changes in his body, Li Yan checked his status. The validity of this purchasing right will last until before the next extension event begins. The final gift will refresh during the next rock burying event.
Yanfu has 1,400 points remaining. Li Yan smiles slightly. That's all I can buy with these points. It costs 50 points.
The extension points are limited to one use.
What on earth is this?
At this moment, the system voice sounded. The above is all the purchasing rights for this time.
Each Salt Talisman can only be used 20 times during an event. Li Yan looked at the tearful introduction.
He secretly thought it wasn't too bad. It was like carrying a battlefield nurse's special prolonging story jar with him. You can purchase with the above evaluation.
It was equivalent to forcibly bringing a life back.
But it seems I can't buy it myself. I can only buy defective golden talismans. The golden talisman can gradually heal wounds. Wounds of medium severity or higher will no longer worsen.
Li Yan quietly sensed the information coming from the tattoo. He smiled faintly. He murmured, "So your name is Chaos." At this moment, Li Yan recalled the impressive golden charm incantation from the recent Yanfu incident.
Its effect was simply shameless. Additional status, Frighten the 100 Demons, enhanced by the Hongmen.
Only one tattoo effect can be active at a time. Then it's this one. Li Yan chose to exchange without hesitation. A burst of yellow light entered his body. Suddenly, a bare-headed wolf larva caught Li Yan's attention, raised by a winged monster. This tattoo actually requires 1,100 salt points. The purchase permission is surprisingly over 180%. Strange Beast. Effect, immunity to 30% of grenade damage, speed up wound healing by 20%. Two black dragons intertwine at the chest, converging. It is named Twin Dragons Turning the Tide. Effect, 10% immunity to grenade damage and 10% accelerated wound healing. It has a slight deterrent effect on ordinary parrots. Flipped for a while, Li Yan discovered something interesting. A foreign object like Hongmen Tattoo Blessing. What catches the eye first is a teal four-clawed dragon running across the shoulder. It is called the Azure Dragon Arm. Effect, 5% immunity to grenade damage and 5% accelerated wound healing. He seems to be waiting for something. After finishing his tasks, Li Yan came back to Kowloon Walled City. He wanted to explore the secrets here once again. He wanted to uncover the truth about Yanfu. Just now. Throw her away further. The others should go back first. Thus, Honggue carried the girl's body and slowly dispersed with the others, while Yushu stayed at the original spot, looking at the ground full of bodies. So you admit it? By the time the girl realized what happened, the dagger in Yushu's hand flashed by. The girl fell into a pool of blood. Yushu coldly said, "Ahong," or if she was touched by Yushu's words. Through her sobs, she said, "I was forced. They kidnapped my brother." Yushu stared coldly at the girl. "Even if you really face difficulties, you tell everyone. Would I not help you?" Upon hearing this, the girl didn't know if it was due to the pressure she was facing. "Any man can pay 200 to get you today. You've been with me for so many years. How could I not trust you? You handle the cart yourself. It's hard for you, little brother. I really don't know what happened. It's not me." The elm tree gently lifted the girl's chin, and said coldly, "We're all on the same side here. I certainly believe you. I remember when you first came to Longcheng. Suddenly, gunfire erupts. All the men in black behind Elm are shot dead. The girl was so scared that she knelt down. She looked at the corpses scattered on the ground and the red ghosts behind the elm tree. The girl hurriedly explained to Tai Sui. He stares at the girl in front of him, watching the girl's clumsy performance. Just as Elm turns around, a group of men in black behind the girl all reveal their fangs. Elm doesn't care. He looks at the item again. The foreign object is enhanced with a Hongmen tattoo. At this moment, in 1986, at Kowloon City Station in Hong Kong, the rain is pouring heavily. Elm stands in the rain holding an umbrella. Two flashes of fire followed. Li Yan feels a bit more skilled than usual. This is a skill that usually requires countless trials to achieve. Yet, he has gained this sense so easily. He holsters his gun. His proficiency in martial arts was stuck at 69%, while his own was stuck at 89%, unable to break through the 90% bottleneck. It seems breaking through won't be easy. He tried firing 2 shots at the locked door. 4 big and 1 small surged into Li Yan's body. The system prompts you have unlocked hot weapon specialization. Current hot weapon specialization, 38%. Current proficiency in ancient martial arts, 89%. Li Yan suddenly thought of Zhang Mingyuan. It will definitely enhance combat strength significantly. He chose to exchange without hesitation.
He exchanged for another secondary hot weapon essence, to improve his shooting skills.
5 streams of light. Level 5 Ancient Martial Arts Bagua Palm Combat Mastery.
Increases melee specialization by 10%.
Cannot be used to break through the 87%, 89%, or 90% bottlenecks. At this moment, Li Yan's ancient martial arts specialization had already reached 83%. If he uses this again, murmuring to himself, 1,000 miles of mighty force, a dragon rises in the ring. I'll just call you Huanlong.
Then, I exchanged for a Colt Remy 91 firearm.
I flipped through the consumables in the exotic items category. Their soldiers use swords on foot, spears on horseback.
Li Yan has trained with the sword for 10 years, and with the spear for 15. He is confident his swordsmanship has reached perfection. He looks at the treasured sword in his hand with satisfaction. A gleaming Han sword slowly took shape. He grasped the hilt. He flicked his wrist and ran the blade forward. It let out a crisp ringing sound. The Li family of Haijian is known for mastering both sword and spear. It is also a sharp killing weapon with dragon-like prowess. Ever since Li Yan returned, he couldn't stop thinking about this Han sword. He didn't expect to be able to exchange for it here. He hurriedly clicked redeem. Suddenly, a brilliant light shone from his hands. At this moment, Li Yan casually glanced at the surrounding light screens, and discovered many items he was interested in. Nameless Han sword. The sword is known for its 1,000 views. He exclaimed, "What? Tai Sui's in trouble. Can you believe it? Is this seemingly pure and adorable sunny girl actually a decisive mafia boss?" He shouted at the new fighters, "Show me some guts." Just because Li Yan's gone doesn't mean no one can step up. Suddenly, a lackey ran over, and whispered something in Red Ghost's ear. After hearing it, Red Ghost's expression changed. Li Yan casually swept his gaze. He discovered many things that delighted him. At the same time, in the Hong Kong Longcheng Shanzhai of 1986, Li Yan's departure left the Red Ghost feeling helpless. Then she looked up at the sky and said, "I want to check the purchase permissions." The purchase permissions have been listed. Please note that items can only be purchased in this room. You cannot make purchases after leaving. Countless items appeared in front of Li Yan. The duration of the disappearance depends on the damage from the blood battle. Li Yan hurriedly tried it out. She executed a few moves. She chuckled softly. It didn't feel particularly special. The more damage caused beforehand, the higher the blood battle damage. Blood battle damage has effects such as breaking magic, killing gods, exterminating ghosts, eliminating monsters, and corroding dragon and tiger weapons. Once the blood battle damage takes effect, the steaming power has temporarily disappeared. Bewitching increases the holder's explosive power and attack speed by 90%. Blood battle uses its own blood as a shadow. After locking onto an enemy, all damage dealt will be accumulated. The user will actively determine and trigger the explosion. Inheritance is related to walking and resting. Increase the revival rate. Walking will enhance lifespan and physical fitness. Full revival. Inheritance lifespan doubled. In an instant, it turned into sparks. And then disappeared. At that moment, Li Yan also had a tattoo of the alluring bird on his chest. Inherit the spirit of the bewitching bird. The bewitching bird. Revival rate at 9%. This reward will be forcibly recognized as inheritance. And this inheritance cannot be traded. Li Yan felt a sudden heat in his chest. The image of the alluring bird suddenly ignited. It transformed into a winged humanoid woman and flew out. Your current Yenfu points are 3,204. Yenfu event completed, special reward. This Yenfu event features the bewitching bird. You will randomly draw an item infused with the power of the bewitching bird. Power of the bewitching bird. Since this is your first time completing a Yenfu event, the purchasing power limit has increased by 10%. The current limit has reached a peak value of 200%, and compensate with 500 Yenfu points. You have exchanged a total of 20 gold bars, gained 2,000 Yenfu points. He directly chose to contribute. The token burst into flames. In a moment, it was completely burned away. The system's voice sounded. You chose to contribute the residual salt. The settlement report is as follows. Superior evaluation settlement, Yenfu points, 500 points. Purchase permission limit, 195%. You are still holding one piece of Yenfu residue. You can contribute it in this settlement to increase your purchase limit. Li Yan looked at the token in his hand. At this moment, Li Yan's 2 fingers, which had already been severed, surprisingly began to slowly restore to their original state. Li Yan stared blankly at his right hand. All the injuries on his body had disappeared without a trace. Even his mental state was surprisingly good. The system notification sounded again. What is going on? Just as Li Yan was puzzled, the system's voice sounded. The walking state is within certain conditions. This repair will not cost any points. Amidst these lights and shadows, the faces of people he had interacted with over the past month flickered. Everyone gradually transformed into fragments, floating beside Li Yan. The
The figures of Xiao, Zhu Di, Li Jiang, Yu, and others passed by one. Among these fragments, Li Yan discovered that there was no sign of Yu Shu. It's time for the welfare segment. What will Li Yan choose? Just now, the sound of the system announcing the settlement echoed in Li Yan's mind. Countless mottled lights and shadows twisted and danced before Li Yan, cracks, like shattered glass, appearing around his body. The system voice sounded again. You have completed this rockfall incident. The evaluation for this rockfall incident is upper. Settlement begins. Li Yan's first rockfall incident has finally ended. Zhu Di's stunning face appears in my mind, lingering for a long time. He couldn't help but smile. As he reached out to take the noodles, he noticed, and on the gold, there's a piece of rice paper. It's the last token of Yanfu, lying at the corner of the table. On top of it is a bowl of steaming wonton noodles. Looking at the bowl, a whole box of golden bricks filled my vision. The system voice sounded. Gold, a valuable item. Each piece can be exchanged for 100 points of extended service. No limit on points. Here's a hint for you. When we first went to Victoria Harbor, I told you something. Li Yan frowned slightly. He directly used the Mandarin Duck Moon to unlock the padlock. Entered the room. What came into view was a black suitcase. There was a note on top of it. It was left by Zhu Di. It seems to be a clue about the code. I was just thinking about it. Li Yan encountered a poplar tree on the way. The two of them did not speak. They glanced at each other, brushed past. A Xiao reported to school today. By the time I got back, I had already left. Will he be unhappy? What will Zhu Di do? And what about the red ghosts? Suddenly, a system voice announced that you had completed all the requirements of the infiltration mission. It will settle and return in 10 minutes. She refused the doctor who came to treat her wounds. Li Yan simply bandaged herself. She quietly reflected on her experiences of the past month. At this moment, the elderly man in the stands instructed the person next to him to take Tianci to the hospital. From today on, people from Ueda Wing Chun Martial Arts Hall are not allowed to step into Kowloon Walled City. The elder took a deep look at the limping Li Yan as she left. He fell silent. If you don't resist, you'll be thrown off the stage. It's either death or defeat. But he still angrily strikes in the air. He knows he's going to lose but still hurts others. He deserves to die. Li Yan slowly raised his right hand, signaling his victory. The red ghost looked at Su Tianci, being carried away by medics, and thought to himself, this kid had already lost when Li Yan lifted him into the air. Resisting will get your neck snapped. Your other eye can still be saved. So young. If he goes blind, he's done for. At this moment, deafening cheers erupted around the ring. You don't play by the rules. Su Tianxi's face was covered in blood. His eyes were barely discernible in the mess of flesh, but he smiled and said, I lost. Li Yan stood up. Looking at the young boy's tender face, he said, go to the hospital now. What am I doing? Li Yan caught the incoming blade with his bandaged right hand. Blood splattered. But he didn't care. He softly said to Su Tianci, you're no fun. The knee slammed down hard against Su Tianxi's neck. Su Tianxi's eyes turned red. The 8 knives in his hands stabbed upward. In that instant after drawing the knives, a strong sense of regret surged in. But it was too late. Li Yan's legs locked around Su Tianxi's neck like steel whips. She twisted her waist with force, lifting Su Tianci off the ground. Li Yan bent her legs. He thought to himself that something was wrong. He had fallen for a trick. That kick had no real force behind it. He wasn't kicked away by someone else. He pushed off the ground with his left foot and jumped up himself. Su Tianci realized this. Just now, Su Tianci kicked Li Yan off the stage with a sudden strike. At this moment, the audience was in an uproar. Everyone thought Li Yan was going to lose. However, Su Tianci was taken aback. Everyone was taken aback. Is this going to be a loss? The duel between Li Yan and Su Tianci finally came to an end. This marked the conclusion of the Yanfu incident. Li Yan is also facing a comeback, and he kicked directly at Li Yan's abdomen. She said to Li Yan, do you remember this kick from a few days ago? Now I'm returning it to you. Watching Li Yan fly towards the audience below, the arena was in an uproar. Would she really risk getting stabbed in the thigh just to break my wrist? A sudden flash of inspiration hit. He pushed off the ground and retreated. He gave up on the stab. His body leaned back. Su Tianci slashed towards Li Yan's lower body with his right hand, blocking any chance for her to lift her leg. When his hand was grabbed by Li Yan, Su Tianxi's heart suddenly turned. Thinking about how Qi Yue blocked and tried to capture him, the golden threads tightly gripped the blade of the 8-slash saber. At this moment, Su Tianxi's 2 blades were holding Li Yan's right hand. She reached for Su Tianxi's wrist, and this was exactly Su Tianxi's blind spot. Seeing his left hand blade being caught, the speed is increasing. Li Yan keeps retreating. Soon, his foot slips to the edge of the arena. A flash of ferocity appears in his eyes. He seizes the moment when Su Tianci strikes. Despite the explosive pain from his eyes to his skull, he maintained the speed and sharp angles of his strikes. It all depends on who can't hold on first. The youth is filled with reckless courage. 8 cuts, each fatal. With a knife in each hand, he charged at Li Yan. Yushu tilted his head, watching Li Yan below. He sighed lightly, thinking about how fights really require some brains. Su Tianxi showed no signs of slowing down his attack. The audience below gasped in surprise. Is he conceding? Li Yan stood there empty-handed. He directly assumed a combat stance. Su Tianxi grinned. He smiled and said, "Spare me. I won't make the same mistake twice." At this moment, Li Yan stood on the stage. With his left hand, he let go of a seed. The afternoon mandarin duck moon fell to the ground. Li Yan's expression turned cold. Golden threads wrapped around his hand, viciously grabbing for Su Tianxi's throat. Su Tianxi was startled. He quickly retreated several meters. His remaining eye fixed firmly on Li Yan. Using one hand against him is like fighting a blind opponent. It's all about the same level. But this kid adapts to tricky weapons faster than I do. At only 19 years old, truly formidable. Another confrontation. Li Yan gradually falls into a disadvantage. His injured wrist moves around. The round blade becomes increasingly ominous. He can only be forced to defend. He quietly analyzes the current situation. At the same time, they both shouted, "Come!" They charged at each other. Another sound of blades clashing. They attacked back and forth. After 4 or 5 exchanges, he looked at Su Tianxi, whose fighting spirit had not waned. The gloom of their parting dissipated from his heart. He laughed fiercely, Wing Chun knives. The frame was vicious enough to kill. The two understood each other without words. Su Tianxi chuckled. His delicate face paired with his bloodied eye sockets was unspeakably eerie. 8/blade, double dragons emerged from the sea. Li Yanchen took a deep breath. Both sides were startled at the same time. They hurriedly retreated. From the wrist to the neck, there were 2 wounds, each 80 centimeters long. He almost slit his own throat. Rising up along Li Yan's arm, one left and one right, they rushed straight for Li Yan's neck. Blood spattered everywhere. Li Yan kicked directly at Su Tianxi's neck. Su Tianxi didn't dare to take any more risks, but Su Tianxi immediately drew both blades and fiercely stabbed Li Yan's hand. The blades slid along his wrist, spreading outward, from top to bottom, like 2 dragons leaping from the sea. The blade pressed against the edge of the mandarin duck crescent blade. Li Yan felt something was wrong. 8/blade binding technique. Li Yan was astonished as the monk caught it with one hand. He tried to retreat. A single slash cut off Li Yan's right wrist. The tremendous impact made it even harder for his already injured left arm to parry. Another upward slash. Li Yan hurriedly used one hand to block Su Tianxi's right hand. With a twist, the blade changed from a regular grip to a reverse grip. And at this moment, this 19-year-old boy reveals his ruthless 18 slashing blades. One hand grips forward, the other in reverse, charging straight at Li Yan. A blade slashes toward her chest, charged towards Li Yan. The battle between Li Yan and Su Tianxi had reached a fever pitch. Who will have the last laugh? Just now, Su Tianxi had one of his eyes destroyed by Li Yan with her golden silk stroke. Li Yan didn't say anything. She didn't persuade him to step down either. She simply shouted for him to come again. Su Tianxi let out an angry roar. 8 blades, one forward and one backward. The 8 trigram's hand can no longer hold on. At this moment, his left eye had become a hideous and terrifying bloody hole, while his right eye was swollen beyond recognition. The whites of his eyes had turned completely red, but quietly watched Su Tianxi. In a low voice, he said, "This move is called Golden Silk White Brow." After a long while, Su Tianxi endured unbearable pain, and gritted his teeth, saying fiercely, creating some distance. The wound on his left arm was deep. Blood was all over the ground. Li Yan quickly pressed on the wound with his hand. He didn't try to claim credit. Blood burst out from his eyes. A roar like that of a wild beast echoed. Su Tianxi hurriedly used his twin blades to shield his eyes. Li Yan did not pursue any further. He made a small hop back. The exposed index finger and thumb slightly curled into an elbow, and stabbed directly towards Su Tianxi's eyes. The old man in the stand suddenly stood up, trembling as he shouted, "Tianxi." At this moment, Su Tianxi was unable to dodge. Now your left hand, which is holding the weapon, is also injured. How are you going to win against me now? Su Tianxi forced his way in close, but Li Yan stepped back half a step. He happened to bump into Li Yan's right hand. Li Yan's left arm is struck by the blade. It cuts 2 inches deep into the flesh. It directly injured the bone. Su Tianxi coldly smiled, thinking the 2 punches harmed him lightly. He is indeed decisive. He thrusts, slashing towards Li Yan's chest. Seeing no time to dodge, Li Yan uses the momentum to spin. He offers up his left arm. The blade flashes. He thought to himself, this kid has me cornered with his one-handed technique. If just now I had twisted my blade to cut his hand, I would have died here. Su Tianxi gave a cold smile. He charges forward, closing in on Li Yan's blade. Su Tianxi bent forward. The 8-cut blade smashed directly toward the weapon in Li Yan's hand.
With a twist of the blade in his left hand, he reversed the blade, aiming straight for Li Yan's neck. Li Yan was startled. That's not the real deal. If you used both hands, it would be your neck bleeding, not the back of your hand. I wouldn't be so sure. The move just now is called Sun and Moon Radiance. Su Tianxi's hand wound wasn't deep. He didn't care either. On the contrary, I got even more excited. Too bad you're using one hand. Luckily, my visit wasn't in vain. The thing in my hand is called Ziwu Mandarin Moon. It's rarely seen in the south. Let me show you. He finished with a cold smile, creating some distance. Li Yan did not pursue. He looked at Su Tianxi and said calmly, I've never seen a genuine 8/sword technique. To see it today feels like an honor. Su Tianxi's expression remained unchanged. He didn't care about the wound on his hand at all. He slashed his sword horizontally at Li Yan's neck with his right hand. Li Yan blocked it in return. Su Tianxi quickly retreated. He flicked his thumb against the mooncake, letting the Mandarin duck moon make a large circle between his fingers. Su Tianxi's pupils shrank sharply. The rotating outer blade pierced directly into Su Tianxi's hand. Blood gushed out. It rushed straight toward Li Yan's throat. Li Yan bent to dodge. Su Tianxi's assault did not lessen. Another strike aimed at Li Yan's face. Li Yan used the Ziwu Mandarin duck moon to block the 8 lantern blades. He pressed Li Yan's weapon downward. The pressure eased. Both weapons separated. Su Tianxi raised the 8-blade knife. He changed to a direct thrust. The straight blade intersects with the round edge of the Ziwu Yuanxiang moon. As long as Li Yan lifts the blade upwards, the rotating circular blade could cut his own hand. Now I understand its power. Su Tianxi quickly used another knife to block the circle. Sparks fly between the icy blades. In just a split second, Su Tianxi is startled. The hidden path is dangerous. I almost got tricked. Gradually turning from a walk into a sprint. Leaping forward, the 8-blade strikes straight at Li Yan's chest. With a clang, weapons collide. He actually went for the kill. Just now, Su Tianxi wielded the 8-knife and stepped forward, each step faster than the last. Then he said, Wing Chun. The final showdown between Su Tianxi and Li Yan was about to begin. Stay tuned for the next episode. It will be even more exciting. This man is really ruthless. Facing such a delicate little boy, the image of Zhu Di still lingered in his mind. Su Tianxi, growing impatient, continued, Did you hear what I said? Li Yan did not respond to him. He directly said, He Jian. Li Yan and Su Tianxi exchanged a sharp glance. He murmured, The stranger the weapon, the faster you die. Have you heard that before? Li Yan didn't react. When he saw the midnight Mandarin duck lute in Li Yan's hand, the old man's eyes moved slightly. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly. He seemed quite familiar with this weapon. Su Tianxi looked at Li Yan across from him. The audience erupted. They kept shouting the name of the King of Hell. An old man sat at the edge of the stands, his expression calm, out of sync with the surrounding atmosphere. But he didn't say anything. He knew it was enough that he had truly loved this man. As for whether he was Li Yan, that doesn't matter anymore. As Li Yan made her entrance to the underground boxing ring, she was thrown into the trash can. The information was about Li Yan. Zhu Di knew. The Li Yan in the file wasn't the Li Yan he liked. He vaguely understood something. His chest pressed firmly against her back. He whispered softly, I left a gift in your room. Remember to take it. Watching Li Yan's departing figure, Zhu Di quietly took a stack of documents from his bag. When will you be back? Li Yan paused for a moment. If you get the chance, come back. Zhu Di ran over. He hugged Li Yan tightly from behind. I bought it in Wanchai yesterday. You can use this to smoke. Your fingers won't get stained. Zhu Di looked a bit sad. He held the gift tightly to his chest. Instead, he took out a small box from his chest. He handed it to Zhu Di. Zhu Di received it and found it was a ring embedded with red jewels. It's your family heirloom. Li Yan smiled awkwardly. Then he walked towards the door. At this moment, Zhu Di had been waiting at the door for a long time. After this match, are you going to leave? Li Yan did not answer. Li Yan's current condition. Right hand severely injured. The specialization in encouragement technique has increased to 82%. Looking at the last bit of ES cell supplement, he drank it all in one go. If there's something, wait until Li Yan finishes his training. He then glanced at Li Yan, and softly said, Safe travels. July 7th, year of the Bingyin. Everything is going smoothly. They collided. At that moment, the door of the training room was pushed open by Yushu. Seeing the two reprimanding each other, he shouted for them to stop. That's about enough. If you hit me again, I'll fight back. The red ghost grinned widely. He whispered, I'd welcome that. Just like that, the two charged at each other. Then comes a punch with the left hand, aimed at Li Yan's back. Li Yan pushed the red ghost away with a single palm. The first punch was something I willingly accepted. The second time crashing into me is just fine. A vicious right hook lands on Li Yan's face.
Li Yan could block or dodge, but he takes the punch head-on. Immediately followed by a shoulder strike, hitting Li Yan in the stomach. Then he started to laugh. He suddenly threw the smoke bomb at Li Yan. Li Yan watched it fly over. With one punch, he knocked it away. The red demon steps forward twice. Then Li Yan showed a wildly carefree smile. The Tai Sui has such a bad temper. It didn't even touch me. You should think it over yourself. Hong Gui was taken aback. Seeing the look on the red ghost's face, Li Yan thought to himself, ever since I first came here, this guy has taken good care of me. Might as well play along. Thanks for everything during this time. Since you already know, if you want to kill me or torture me, let me finish tomorrow's final match, then we'll talk. Red Ghost made a displeased hand gesture. Now Zhu Di is protecting you. How would I dare harm you? How have I treated you? Pretty well. What do you want to say, Red Ghost? Get to the point. Tai Sui told me to ask you, are you planning to disappear without a word? Li Yan smiled slightly, and haven't sparred with you yet. How about we spar? Sparring is fine. You've been here for quite a while, Yan. How's the service tower treating you? Gives you a very slim chance of winning? Li Yan smiles faintly. He didn't answer Red Ghost's question, but instead said, Brother Red Ghost, I've been in Long City for so long. In the underground practice hall, Li Yan is continuously practicing with her left-handed round blade. Hong Gui stands nearby watching Li Yan. The Mandarin Duck Moon is a two-handed sword. Using your weaker left hand to wield it. The Zuoyuan Yangyue is a remarkable weapon passed down by the founder of the Bagua sect, Dong Haichuan. It consists of a large and a small crescent blade connected oppositely. The pair resembles a distorted mathematical letter X. A gap is left in the middle for the user to grip. It's a type of two-handed short blade that is rarer than a butterfly sword. He got up and prepared to leave. With the departure of the Red Ghost, only Li Yan and Yushu remain in the room. The two sit in silence facing each other. The atmosphere is both strange and harmonious. I want to change to a weapon that represents the Bagua Gate, Zuoyuan Yangyue. The elm tree, which had been silent for a long time, glanced at him and said, one in your left hand is enough. You really are arrogant. Hong Gui glanced at Tai Sui. Does he have a grasp on the true lineage of Yip Man? Or is he using a sword instead? Li Yan thought seriously for a moment. I injured my right hand. Although the Han sword is fierce, its curiosity is, there was no opportunity to fight back. It was these 21 stabs. Su Tianxi was covered in blood. He looked at Li Yan, who had a serious expression. The soul demon quietly asked if Su Tianxi used the 8-slash blade. The blade is as swift as mercury spilling on the ground. At one point, Su Tianxi was completely overpowered, unable to counter. A total of 21 strikes. Li Yan admits that within these 21 strikes, even he himself, after finishing the duo match with Zhu Di, Li Yan confidently declared he would win. Su Tianxi arrived at the private room in the service building. The TV is replaying the video of Su Tianxi and Xiao Zhou. Xiao Zhou wields a 9-ring broadsword. The sword moves like ink flowing on paper. I'll definitely beat him. Watch closely, this man is just too brutal. He just finished a duo match with a beauty, and is now about to thrash a little boy. Just moments ago, there's no way you could lose to that kid Yongchun, right? Li Yan smiles and looks at Zhu Di. Do you want me to win? Of course, Li Yan takes the cigarette from Zhu Di's hand. He confidently said. Li Yan couldn't help but sigh that women are born actresses. In Zhu Di's luxurious villa, Li Yan and Zhu Di have just finished a duo match. Zhu Di looks at Li Yan's right hand. Concerned, he asks, even if you hurt your right hand. A Xiao, right? You can call me Sister Zhu Di. A Xiao's small face nervously stared at Zhu Di for a while. Then she directly rushed into Zhu Di's arms. The two embraced and cried. She was still saying that she didn't expect her aunt to be in Hong Kong all along. I didn't see her until she passed away. But I will definitely take good care of the daughter she left behind. Then, she directly half-squatted in front of a Xiao. With red eyes, she looked at a Xiao. Your mother also hopes you are doing well. Looking at a Xiao in front of him, Li Yan knows there is only so much he can do. After a sudden, urgent knock on the door, Julie pushed the door open, her eyes red and panic-stricken. Axia knows her family fled from hardship. How could they have relatives in Hong Kong? Li Yan was clearly lying to herself, as if she had seen through Axia's thoughts. Li Yan gently patted Axia's head and softly said, what your mother said before she left must be true. He's a distant relative of yours. I put in a lot of effort to find him. He's willing to be your guardian, both legally and emotionally. He's more suitable than me. The next morning, service building. Ah Xiao was still questioning Li Yan about where he went yesterday. Li Yan laughed and said to Ah Xiao, I've taken care of the paperwork for you to go to school. I'll introduce you to someone later. Gazing at the night view of Victoria Island, she fell into Li Yan's arms and kissed him passionately. The two embraced each other like this. The quiet heart finally ignited a spark. Honestly, I thought you were just playing around at first. Zhu Di gently brushed aside her hair. making her already stunning beauty even more radiant. Who said I was just playing around with you? With that, she took Li Yan to the deck. Don't hurt her. Li Yan seemed to be talking to himself, and also explaining to Zhu Di. With the 3 fingers left on his right hand holding a cigarette, he looked at Zhu Di seriously. Sleep with you, take the money, and leave. Who can find that? I don't even know when it all started. I told myself, this girl is not bad. Speaking of breakups, I've been thinking about it too. Is there something wrong with me? You're beautiful, have a sweet voice, great body, and you're loaded. Li Yan took a sip of noodle soup. Looking at Zhu Di, he said, I'm leaving Hong Kong. Where are you going? Where I'm going doesn't matter. What matters is that I must leave. A sharp sword needs a suitable sheath to feel at ease. Not a sword that is sharper than itself. Why is that? Zhu Di asked urgently. He knew he truly had feelings for Li Yan. Why not ask the magical conch? Zhu Di suppressed the urge to curse and said, is it because it's too fragmented? Li Yan directly sprayed beer out. He didn't expect Zhu Di's thought process to be so astonishing. The waiter smiled and stepped away. Only the sound of the ship's whistle echoed over the calm sea. Why did you break up with me? Zhu Di looked at Li Yan with a serious face. Li Yan shrugged his shoulders. Zhu Di snapped his fingers. He told the waiter to bring this gentleman 10 more bowls of wonton noodles. He looked at Li Yan with a smile. I've reserved this boat for tonight. We have plenty of time. He gently asked, is that enough to eat? Eat well, and then we can talk. Li Yan hurriedly interrupted Zhu Di. He knew what Zhu Di wanted to ask. He smiled and said, I think I can have another bowl. A stone boat resembling a palace floated on the sea. Li Yan was devouring wonton noodles. Soon, the 4th bowl was already empty. Li Yan satisfiedly let out a loud burp. Zhu Di looked at the man in front of him with a smile. Because you don't possess any inheritance. Unfortunately, you're not qualified to devour the 8 serpents. Li Yan finally teamed up with Zhu Di for a match. Zhu Di also finally understood why Li Yan broke up with him. Victoria Harbor, Hong Kong. Li Yan supported Li, slowly walking downstairs. The system's sound chimed again. You killed the predator. You have gained all the purchasing privileges obtained by the other party in this floating rock event, and 30% of the settlement rewards. Li Yan was holding Li and looking down at the scene below. The tension in his heart finally eased. Her body went limp, leaning against the car door. She let out a long sigh, crying with her face covered. With Li Yan's support, he stood up. The feeling of being alive after the disaster was truly wonderful. The sound of police sirens echoed outside. Julie got out of the car barefoot. He looked up at the building. Li Yan turned his head. He looked at the woman. He whispered, what are you doing? Are you checking to see if I'm dead? Looking at the unscathed Li Yan, Li was somewhat at a loss for words. Both of them knelt on the ground simultaneously. It became completely still. The whole world seemed to fall silent. Li crawled over to Li Yan, dragging his wounded body. He tugged at his pant leg. The blade was drawn and swung, like flowing clouds and flowing water. A tragic red line cut through Li Jianyu's neck. At the same time, a dark light pierced Li Yan's forehead. The machete, covered in blood, fell from Li Yan's hand to the ground. It notified you that you've discerned your opponent's weakness. The next attack, including but not limited to gunfire, blades, poison, or any harmful actions, will have a 100% increase in release speed. Damage increased by 100%. A palm rested on Li Jianyu's shoulder, gripping the handle of the machete. The snake's body shattered into countless fragments. The Li Jiang fish lunged back at Li Yan. A black flash shot straight toward Li Yan's forehead. The system sound chimed. A fleeting glimpse. The 8 Serpents' inheritance ability will enter a cooldown due to a stealth event. Your expertise will forcibly decrease by 10%. You voluntarily exploded your inheritance. You pay a huge price for a fatal strike. The 8 Serpents howl in rage to the sky. Li Jianyu's heart grew ruthless. He could no longer care about anything else. Let's deal with this first. System notification sounds. You initiated the explosion. It looked incredibly weak. Before Li Jianyu could react, Li Yan's fist was already in front of him. A heavy blow sent Li Jianyu flying. He felt the taste of death. Li Yan reacted quickly, and threw her gun over. It turned out her gun was also empty. The snake's head quickly bit down. The pistol wobbled noticeably. Let go of that woman. How about everyone just throw their guns away to make it fair? Just as Li was hesitating in Li Jiang, Li's voice rang out, shoot. Her gun was empty. Li Yan furrowed his brows. What's a defector? It seems this Yanfu isn't simple. He glanced at the M1923 gun in Li Jianyu's hand. You can't hold that gun steady with your left hand, can you? Suddenly, Li Jianyu seemed to realize something. He shouted loudly, Ba Shi, aren't you afraid? This can't be your first time experiencing the Yanfu incident. You're a defector. Li Jianyu was startled. This was the last voice he wanted to hear. He immediately raised his gun at Li Yan. Li Yan was just as quick.
The dark muzzle was aimed at the other. He picked up the handgun from the ground. Dragging the seriously injured Lily, he ran toward the door. Suddenly, a voice rang out. "Where are you in such a hurry to run off to? Not going to play with your dad a little longer? Where is he, your master? Where is he?" Lee stared intently at Lee Jiangyu. He let out a cold laugh. "What about your mother?" At this moment, Lee Jiangyu, furious, kicked Lily's wound hard. A machete pierced right through his shoulder. Blood was everywhere. The strange snake was gone, too. Lee Jiangyu grabbed Lee by the collar. He shouted angrily. Lee Jiangyu suddenly pushed open the door. He looked around. He found that Ju Di was already gone. Lee stared at the man, somewhat dazed. He didn't expect this man to be beaten so badly. A fleeting glimpse. It clearly shows that the man is just a newcomer. He has no legacy at all. The only commendable thing is his impressive 81% in inspiration specialization. His only hope right now is the gun that the female bodyguard dropped upstairs. That's how he escaped a disaster. At this point, he was already terrified by Li Yan's ferocity. He desperately ran upstairs. He didn't understand why he was losing. The timing, the location, and the people were all in his favor. The gun of the female bodyguard was still lying there. The fight between Li Yan and Li Jiangyu had finally reached the last stage. Just a moment ago, Li Yan dealt a fatal blow to Li Jiangyu at the cost of one hand. Fortunately, Li Jiangyu has a skill to save his life. Shouted loudly, "Madman! This person is a madman!" Blood dripped, splattering on the ground. Li Jiangyu frantically rushed upstairs. He knew he still had hope. He wrapped them around his right hand. Li Yan grinned. Suddenly, he started to laugh. The man's hearty laughter echoed throughout the apartment. Li Jiangyu looked back in terror. He wanted to give chase. He looked down at his right hand. The little finger and ring finger disappeared without a trace. Blood continued to flow from the wound. He tore his clothes into strips. At this moment, behind Li Jiangyu appeared an elder with an ethereal, immortal-like demeanor. A flash of golden light. Though fatally wounded, Li Jiangyu stood up again. Dragging his injured body, he ran outside. Li Yan gritted his teeth and flipped over. It reminded him that the opponent activated the golden talisman shock. It's triggered when suffering potentially fatal damage. The damage would be forcibly capped at a non-lethal level, and would slowly recover to 30% of the original injury. Injuries leading to disability cannot be healed. Li Yan was gasping heavily. Sweat dripped from his forehead. The danger just now still left him shaken. At this moment, the system's voice sounded. A fleeting glimpse. Everything went black before him. A large amount of blood spurted from his mouth and nose. Bashi was struck as if by lightning. His body suddenly went limp. He fell to the ground along with Li Jiangyu. His left foot planted on the ground. His right toes raised high to kick. He aimed a kick at Li Jiangyu's head. The door opened with a stone creak. The foot struck precisely on Li Jiangyu's temple. Li Yan's palm slid to the right, minimizing the contact with the teeth. Blood gushed out. Li Yan seemed oblivious. He turned and bent down. The forearm swayed. What if this hand sends you away? The tongue suddenly rushed in. It bit down hard on Li Yan's right hand. Before the teeth could close, Li Yan did not retreat at all. 3 parts in his heart. The anger surged. The upper arm slightly lifted. The hand was all palm. Li Yan unexpectedly vanished without a trace. Then a violent rush of wind came from behind his head. In Li Jiangyu's eyes, Li Yan's figure had disappeared. But the 8 snakes had no heads. Like a thunderclap, they bit toward the back of Li Yan's fist. He dodged the 8 serpents' attacks, while continuously moving closer to Li Jiang. He bent his knees and twisted his waist. His feet danced like the bagua. A flash passed before Li Jiangyu's eyes. Li Jiang felt a stir in her heart. The 8 serpents did not initiate an attack. Instead, they continued to protect him closely. The serpent heads relentlessly pursued Li Yan's figure. Li Yan pushed his speed to the limit. Since that's the case, if you don't enter the tiger's den, how can you obtain its cub? Understanding the key to it all, Li Yan actively stepped forward. The slower it gets, the tongue of the enlightened beast, is the eyes of the enlightened beast. It's not the enlightened beast with its 8 tongues. What's truly formidable is its teeth. As long as it makes contact, it can swallow a part of you. Its straight-line attack is fast, but it's not agile at turning. The farther it is from the director. Without a second thought, she ordered the 8 snake to retreat. She protected herself closely. At this moment, Li Yan calmly observed the 8 snake. His mind quickly analyzed that this strange snake's fangs seemed to contain some kind of special ability. Whatever it is, it felt as if his foot had hit an iron plate. He immediately switched from kicking to stomping, jumping up to the top of the 8 snake. Li Jiangyu saw Li Yan jump over the snake's head again. Fearing that Li Yan would use the same trick again, pale fangs came directly at him. Li Yan twisted his left foot. Using the strength of his calf, he dodged the snake's attack. At the same time, his heel fiercely kicked the side of the snake's head. This strike made Li Yan's heart tremble.
cautiously watching Li Jiangyu across from her. The faucet behind her had been shattered by the previous strike. Cold water continuously rushed against Li Yan's back, yet Li Yan seemed completely unaware. The snake moved suddenly, and so did the person. The battle between Li Yan and Li Jiangyu had finally reached its climax. The 8 serpents coiled tightly around Li Jiangyu, blocking the entrance completely. The black scales flowed like water. Li Yan assumed a fighting stance, turned around and said, "This won't work on the monster snake, but it can hurt you." He glanced at the injured Li again. He knew now wasn't the time to be sentimental. With reddened eyes, he said, "Take care. Quick, jump out the window. Get someone on the street to call the police." Zhu Di skillfully unloaded the bullets from the handgun, dropped it on the ground, took off her high heels. "I've lived this long, and have never seen a monster like this. It completely shatters my understanding of the world." At this moment, Zhu Di, who had escaped, picked up the handgun from the ground and widened his eyes. He shouted loudly, "Don't be stupid." Li kept tearing at the rope on Zhu Di's hand with his teeth. Finally, he bit a small hole in the rope. He spat out the rope from his mouth. He quietly said, "It doesn't matter who comes. That strange snake can't kill me at all." He viciously said, "You're F********* ing dead." At the same time, Zhu Di upstairs heard the sound from downstairs. He quietly asked Li, "Could it be Li Yan coming?" Li Yan was startled. At this moment, there was no way to dodge. He could only grab the snake's head with his hand to defend himself. The immense force slammed Li Yan into a nearby small room. Li Jiangyu watched as Li Yan forcibly endured 8 snakes and a chicken. In the narrow and cramped passage, Li Yan could only keep jumping and moving, barely dodging the attacks from the 8 snakes. He seized the opportunity and fired a few shots at the snake heads, but it had no effect. Li Yan turned again. He kicked Li Jiangyu into the air, then immediately pulled out a gun and fired several shots at Li Jiangyu. But the bullets were all blocked by the 8 snakes. The 8 snakes were incredibly fast and agile. Li Yan, suspended in midair, barely twisted. Leaning his body with his waist, he tilted slightly. He narrowly dodged a fatal blow, but he still received a wound from the 8 serpent. Enduring the sharp pain, it got stuck in the shoulder. Seeing the opportunity, Li Yan leaped forward to Ayu's side, ready to deal with him directly. Suddenly felt a chill breeze behind him. Gunshots rang out. A bullet grazed Li Yan's shoulder. The sleeve was shattered, but Li Jiangyu was brutally struck in the shoulder by a dogleg cleaver. The blade penetrated 3 inches deep. Li Jiang and Li Yan rushed over. She drew her gun directly. She was ready to shoot Li Yan. Li Yan swung hard. The knife light danced. Just as the two were about to collide, Li Yan bent her knees. He exerted force from his waist. His whole body slid over in a sitting position. He narrowly dodged the attack from the python. Li Yan charged over. Li Jiangyu chuckled. He was very confident in his 8 serpents. The heads of the 8 serpents were swift. Like lightning, they struck toward Li Yan's neck. Li Yan had a plan in mind. Since bullets didn't work, he put away the pistol and drew the kukri machete, rushing quickly toward Li Jiangyu. There is also a certain chance to devour its inheritance. A predator killing its prey won't gain any rewards, but they can 100% devour the inheritance of the other predator. It can be obtained through certain special items. After reading the introduction of the 8 serpent inheritance and predators, the predators hunting, the predator and the fleeting glimpse of the walk present an irreconcilable contradiction of events. It can only be resolved by one party exiting or even dying. If the predator kills the predator, they will gain all the purchasing rights obtained in this rock subjugation event and a 30% settlement reward. I don't know what their effects are. Watching the 8 serpents spit out apricots, Li Yan felt a chill run down his spine. At this moment, the system voice echoed again, "You have discovered. The man's name is Li Jiangyu. He is currently in a state of binge eating. He possesses the 8 serpent inheritance. Apart from a fleeting glimpse, his skills include 8 serpents' fangs and golden talismans." They fell off one by one. Li Yan furrowed his brow. Cold sweat began to bead on his forehead. A system notification sounded, "You are facing the power of the 8 serpents." From the data feedback of a fleeting glimpse, seeing Ayu come out, Li Yan quickly pulled out his gun and shot. A piercing sound of metal shattering sent chills down the spine. A black snake, about 3 meters long and as thick as a man's arm, coiled around him, its body swirling with dark energy. Bullets struck the scales of the black snake. Sparks flew up from the ground. Behind the wall, Ayu gritted his teeth. Li Yan felt that Ayu's sharpness made things a bit tricky. He had just poked his head out. He was startled by the bullet that hit the wall. In just one round, he was knocked away. Just now, Li Yan saw a white-haired man in the mirror. Danger! Li Yan suddenly crouched and rolled. A bang was heard near his ear. A tiger sees no trenches before its eyes. There are obstacles in front of the cowardly soldier. And just at that moment, Li Yan suddenly discovered a white-haired man with a gun hiding behind him in the mirror. The battle between Li Yan and the 8 serpents has finally begun. A ruthless man shows no mercy. Besides, nothing might happen to him. The idea is tempting, but Li Yan quickly dismissed it. His share of resentment was not for nothing. Force him out, even if it hurts the innocent. These people mean nothing to me anyway. Even Zhu Di was only just acquainted for over 20 days. This guy relied on the passive idea that I would rush here after hearing the news. But what if I hadn't come? Wouldn't all your scheming have been in vain? At that moment, a cold thought flashed in Li Yan's mind. Set fire to this place. There'd be no need to use Zhu Di to threaten me. If the other side were truly capable, they wouldn't have waited until now to make a move. If I didn't have something to take care of, I would have ended this situation long ago. Truly meticulous planning. The space here is so small. If I were holding a Han sword, I wouldn't be able to fully use it. Every one of Zhu Di's bodyguards is armed with a gun. If he had the strength of a tough guy with advanced weapons, they can only move within a 200-meter radius. Going beyond that range will result in severe backlash. But in such a confined space, it's enough. And at this moment, Li Yan had just entered the apartment and frowned. Biological affinity, 63%. This ability of mine is much rarer than ancient martial arts. Combined with my heritage of the 8 serpents, my chances of winning are naturally much greater. Although once the 8 serpents are released, although there had been 3 previous rockslide incidents, but my expertise does not belong to the combat category. Instead, I have an advantage in reconnaissance, so I was able to discover his identity earlier than Li Yan. However, my ability to engage directly in combat is close to 0. He smiled gently at Zhu Di. Since you know to investigate in advance, why shouldn't I check on your lover? Just as he spoke, his gaze sharpened. With a grim expression, he watched Li Yan walk into the apartment. This was the 4th rockslide incident he had experienced. Aren't you an orphan? You've never been to the mainland. How do you know Li Yan? As Zhu Di's question came, Ayu's thoughts were pulled back to reality. Currently, only one target remains. He's very clear about his objective. As long as he defeats Li Yan, he can simultaneously complete items 2 and 3, perfectly finishing the Yanfu incident. Your current targets 2 and 3 are incomplete. Of these, target 2 is the most critical. Once completed, you will qualify for return. The second requirement of Ayu's rock event is to clear out all the walkers involved in this event. Who stays, who goes, who lives, who dies. I make the decisions. At this moment, a system notification sounded in Ayu's mind. Please note, you have only 10 hours left until the final deadline for return. Just my type. I won't let her die that easily. As for leaving here, are you kidding me? This is my turf. From time to time, he coughed up blood. It looks like he's seriously injured. You glanced at Li. He smirked and said, don't worry. This chick is so hot. Even if you kidnap me, it's hard to get anything out of it. I can leave here with you. But you need to call my escort and send them to the hospital first. The example Zhu Di mentioned. His white shirt was already stained red with blood. Zhu Di's face, with his hands tied by ropes, turned slightly pale. He still doesn't know what Ayu's real intention is. To stay alive. He had no choice but to tentatively say, if it's money you want, we can negotiate. There are too many people here. Li Yan looked up, and the missing part was located at Wuxing Rental Apartments. Meanwhile, Ayu leisurely lit a cigarette. This plan has been set up for so long. All for today. Li Yan held a machete wrapped in cloth strips, and looked around cautiously. Suddenly, his chest felt a surge of heat. The location of the missing part of the ancient novel has been reported. Please stand by for reception. Poland Street is a famous red light district in Hong Kong. Convenient transportation. Densely populated. It's full of hourly hotels, bars, and nightclubs. The nightlife is endless. Such a delicate and beautiful woman has been kidnapped. And the kidnapper's motive is not money. Just now, Li Yan, who received the news of Zhu Di's kidnapping, arrived at Poland Street as instructed. A strange voice came through. 20 minutes to the Saint Rent apartment on Polish Street. I'm clearing the place today. If you don't come, you will never see your little lover again. He even let Zhu Di find him on purpose. There's only about a month left now. A patient opponent like this is quite troublesome. Just as Li Yan drove up to Zhu Di's villa, the phone rang. This person had been toying with him for several days. He always operates in places bustling with gang organizations. He must be a troublemaker. He should have guessed my identity. He should also know my relationship with Zhu Di. However, Li stood in front of a U. She turned sideways, revealing the handgun at her waist, and reminded him, I just want to tell you, don't get any funny ideas. At that moment, Li Yan was still searching for Zhu Di everywhere. He calmly analyzed the situation before him. He didn't want to stay here for long. The man grinned, I wouldn't carry something worth 200,000 on me. Just go get it at my house. Zhu Di turned around and said, good, no problem. He still didn't take a mixed-up guy seriously. Li, let's go. Wait, 200,000. It's just 200,000. Zhu Di said directly, give me the thing. Take the money and leave. There was not the slightest hesitation. Zhu Di did not blink. He said directly, 200,000. The man looked a bit hesitant. Zhu Di stood up and laughed. You are very greedy. A scoundrel definitely has a future. The blue-haired, stunning woman in front of him seemed to harbor great hostility toward him. Ao licked his lips and thought, better discuss the price first. 100,000 for each. Ao remained silent. He waved his hand. Wearing gold-rimmed glasses is eating cake. No one could tell that the man in front of them is the rising star closely linked to Lianqing. They call him Ao. Ao glanced around, noticing a few female bodyguards watching him. Based on the fleeting data feedback, 4 of them are in my hands. That woman wouldn't have gone to find it, right? The last one should be with Yen Fuxing, who has never shown up. In a private room at a bar in Longchang, a man in a dark pinstriped suit. A wave of gloom suddenly washed over Li Yan. Dialed Zhu Di's number again, but couldn't get through. Immediately sensed something was wrong. 5 fragments. Li Yan was taken aback. He hurriedly asked, what do you mean? Where did you hear that? But Zhu Di did not answer. He simply hung up the phone. Zhu Di, how have you been these past few days? Did you use the recipe I gave you to calm your nerves and boost your brain? I flushed the recipe down the toilet. And those strange and unusual scraps of paper you collected. I'm planning to dispose of them too. ENGSUB picks up the phone and looks at Zhu Di's name on the screen. How should I start this? After hesitating for a while, she still dialed the number. It seems like she's still angry. Li Yan chuckled. He turned and left the room. He can't stay here much longer. He needs to arrange things quickly. You stay here for a few days. In a few days, I'll find a way to get you out of the city. It's none of your business. I don't want to see you again. Aishio's voice is a bit hoarse. Inside an apartment in the service building, Li Yan leans against the door, sitting on a cigarette butt. In the room, Aishio's hair is wet. She has changed into a loose outfit. Li Yan's hand was bleeding from Aishio's bite. Yet, Li Yan's face showed no expression. She could understand Aishio's helplessness. Gently, she placed her hand on the girl's head. Come with me. Gently, she reached out her hand. I want to pull Aishio up. Aishio suddenly pounced. She grabbed Li Yan's hand. Her teeth viciously sank into the back of her hand. Her hands wrapped around her knees. Her eyes vacant. The room was filled with bodies scattered everywhere. Li Yan suddenly felt a pang of sorrow for the girl in front of her. She didn't know what this girl had to endure every day. He took off his coat and covered the upper half of the body. Then, he turned and opened the door. Li Yan remained silent. At this moment, ENGSUB was curled up in the corner. The last rock crawler has finally appeared, and even kidnapped Zhu Di. Just a moment ago, Li Yan sent off Aishio's mother. Looking at the fallen woman, in the pink light, the young man looked pale. He suddenly threw the glass in his hand. He snarled viciously, fine, then I'll play with you till the end. You will return immediately. They refuse to end this rock cover event. Leaving your fate in someone else's hands is the dumbest thing. The walker, sir. A system notification sound is heard. The target has completed the most critical part of the rock cover event. They have gained the right to end this rock cover event. Once they choose to end it, you will be deemed to have failed the event. Looking at the fragments of the bewitching bird, Li Yan realizes that it is not yet time to end. He refuses to end. At the same time, in a KTV in the walled city, once you refuse to end it, only after completing all requirements, can you return to the real world? The current incomplete requirement is to reach level 7 at Jiulong Spring Terrace. Failure to complete this will affect your settlement rewards. The remnants of the bewitching bird in Li Yan's hand change again. You have awakened the remnant soul of the bewitching bird. You have completed the most critical part of this infiltration event. You have obtained the right to end this Yanfu event. Please decide within 10 minutes whether to end it. Her eyes shining with a red glow, she shouted at Li Yan to remember what she said. A powerful force of the soul surged out. The light dissipates. The woman's body falls heavily to the ground. I'll say it one last time. In any case, I will do everything I can to take care of Aishio. Believe it or not, the woman suddenly looked up. You want my soul? It doesn't matter if it's me or him. I can agree to your terms, but I want you to swear you'll take care of ENGSUB for me. I won't swear. I have no right to preach to you. Let's see the truth in action instead. After speaking, he took out the incomplete scroll of the bewitching bird from his chest. The woman stared intently at the incomplete scroll of the bewitching bird. Suddenly, she was relieved. She calmly said, Auntie, I must see you off today. I will have someone take care of Aishio. It's definitely better than waiting to die with you. I came into this mess just to survive. She begged Li Yan not to kill her. Mom, why are you here to disturb us? I just want to stay and take care of my daughter. Li Yan heard the woman's question. After a moment of silence, Li Yan grabbed Aishio's arm. She pushed her into the room. She locked the door. With one kick, she broke the door lock. Meanwhile, Ashio was crying and banging on the door. Its tone was exceptionally gentle. It said to Ashio, "Good daughter, you go in first. Listen to your mother." Ashio hesitated a bit. "I'll talk to auntie." Ashio bit her lower lip, looking at Li Yan with tears in her eyes, but the body showed no signs of movement. Although the corpse looked hideous, but she didn't act recklessly again. At this moment, Li Yan's expression was somewhat complicated. After a moment of silence, she said to Ashio, "Ashio, you go inside and wait for a while." Bang! Ashio was so frightened that she collapsed onto the ground. "Let go of my daughter." The corpse trembled as it stood up. It roared at Li Yan. Ashio, scared, closed her eyes. Her pale fingers tightened on the trigger, but he found that no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't pull the trigger. Li Yan snatched the gun from Ashio's hand. He pulled the safety and fired a shot into the air. Li Yan didn't think twice. She bent backward and raised her leg. Her high kick struck the face of the corpse. She kicked it aside. With this kick, Li Yan clearly felt that the corpse was much weaker than before. Status, affluent. Long-term contact with parrots has led to a loss of vitality and lifespan. "Where did you get the gun?" Li Yan walked towards Ashio expressionlessly. Suddenly, a gust of wind rushed past her left ear. She willingly offered her soul. Just now, Ashio trembled as she held a gun, pointing it at Li Yan with a glance. "Name, Zhang Changxiu. Don't hit my mom." This woman was truly pitiful. For the sake of her daughter, she became a corpse ghost lingering in the human world. And now, for her daughter again. With a fierce kick, she sent the woman flying. At that moment, Ashio's face was pale. She trembled as she held a handgun. With tear-filled eyes, she looked at Li Yan. Pleading, she said, "Don't." A startled cry came, "Mom." Li Yan's heart trembled. The sharp knife was retracted in midair. It turned around. Forced to change tactics. It really doesn't seem like it's a lie. Taking this opportunity, Li Yan acted without hesitation. The bone-cutting knife in her hand aimed directly at the woman's face. Just then, a rotting, hideous face was almost pressed against his own. Li Yan suddenly sprayed a mouthful of bright red blood. It just sprayed the woman's face. The woman covered her face and stepped back. Li Yan had always heard that the tongue had miraculous effects against evil spirits. His eyes were extremely sore, yet he dared not blink at all. Blood from his eyelids slowly flowed into his eyes. Finally, Li Yan could not help but blink. In that less than half a second, "If I'm going to die like this, it must be worse than you think. Why don't we meet in the underworld then?" The room was silent. Li Yan warily looked around. Li Yan had no choice but to pull out the knife. A large amount of blood spurted from the wound. Enduring the intense pain, Li Yan chuckled softly, "Auntie, are you angrier than I am?" A shadow flashed by. A boning knife stabbed into his waist. Instinctively, he reached back to grab the attacker's shoulder. But once again, he grasped nothing. He hadn't expected the woman to be so fast. But there was nothing there. Li Yan gasped for breath, carefully observing his surroundings. He shouted loudly, "Ashio, are you there?" Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his waist. When Li Yan opened his eyes again, the woman was already gone. Without thinking, he turned around. It felt like a steel whip had struck him fiercely from behind. The entire Han sword pierced through the woman's body. Only the hilt remained exposed outside. At the same time, the woman's sharp nails left 3 claw marks on Li Yan's face. His eyelid was injured. Li Yan attempted to withdraw her Han sword, but found her strength disappearing like water into the sea. He let go of the sword hilt without hesitation. His left leg pushed backward off the ground. His right foot viciously kicked the sword hilt. Li Yan showed no sign of retreat. With a fierce leap, her sword closed in on the lady-in-waiting. The blade pierced straight into the woman's chest. Yet, the woman seemed unfazed by it. She raised her arm to grab at Li Yan. She stared intently at Li Yan. Li Yan was also shocked. It was certainly her first time encountering such a thing. The woman suddenly lunged forward. Speed increased dramatically. The woman leaped into the air. She dodged the deadly sword. After landing, the woman supported herself with one hand on the ground. In a bizarre posture, she crawled on the ground. Her eyes flashed with a red glow. He drew the welding sword in his hand. A flash of swordlight passed by. One of the woman's pitch-black arms was severed by Li Yan's sword. Li Yan's eyes widened. The sword blade went straight for the corpse demon's head. Some areas of her body were even oozing moisture, and maggots were crawling over her. The woman's tightly shut eyelids suddenly flew open. The foul-smelling fingers grabbed Li Yan's neck. Li Yan hurriedly stepped back. He walked slowly up to the woman. He struggled to hold back the stench. Finally, he saw the woman's face clearly. Her entire face had already started to rot. Large patches of black necrosis were shocking to behold. Seemingly waiting for something, the eerie atmosphere made Li Yan break out in a cold sweat. "Auntie, why are you still awake at this hour?" The woman did not speak. The whole room was terrifyingly silent. Li Yan's pupils contracted. There were blood splatters all over the walls. The faint moonlight seeped through the window, bringing some light to the room. Auntie sat motionless in the chair. The shard of the guhua bird on his chest grew increasingly hot, as if it was craving something. He gently pushed the door, which surprisingly wasn't locked, and it swung open. A strong stench of blood hit him. He softly muttered, "That bastard." On the 30th day of the 6th month in the Bingyin year. It's suitable for burial and longevity tombs. The sky was hazy. Li Yan, holding a Han sword, arrived at the door of Xiu's house. Now someone is offering a high reward for these manuscripts. Coincidentally, I saw these rare editions while he was changing clothes. Thinking of this, Zhu Di's face turned slightly red. Zhu Di gently poured a glass of red wine. The assistant beside him noticed that Zhu Di seemed a bit flustered. Quickly asked what happened. The stolen goods from the bank robbery have been tallied. A few rare manuscript pages from the Republic era were missing. Suddenly, the phone rang. The assistant handed the phone to Zhu Di. Zhu Di quietly listened to the voice on the other end. Something seems off. He hung up the phone. Please give me your advice, and at this moment, in a villa at Repulse Bay, Zhu Di, wearing a turtleneck pajama, muttered angrily, I won't let him go. Definitely not. This is the combat stance of the Bagua sect. The blade is 5 fingers wide. The surface of the blade is mottled. A horsehair tassel hangs down to the waist. Bagua Yushu. The two stood facing each other. Li Yan held a treacherous glimmer in his eyes. With a serious expression. He Jian, Li Yan. Please instruct. Yushu holds a dark-backed broadsword. Tilted her head. And smiled at Li Yan. Alright, I see you're quite fired up. Helping people vent their anger is what I'm good at. In a relatively spacious room. You really think of me as a little wolf dog. Tai Sui and the others say the strongest in Kowloon Walled City isn't the Red Ghost. It's you. Why don't we put on some protective gear? Let's spar a bit. Hearing this, Yushu. Once they pair up, it's hard to tell what's important and what's not. It's not easy for me to manage the boxing ring. Please understand me a little. You won't lose anything by playing along, right? Li Yan glanced at Yushu oddly. He found a chair and sat down. With a slight headache, he said without urgency, let's chat about what's going on between you and Zhu Di. Seeing that Li Yan didn't respond, he continued, you know how women are. Turning around to look at Yushu. Without the slightest panic, I have some personal matters to attend to. It has nothing to do with the whole island. Yushu walked in slowly. A faint aura of dragon energy surrounds. Li Yan has already made up his mind. Taking my sword so late at night, where are you going? Yushu looks calmly at Li Yan, waiting for his answer. Tonight, Kowloon Walled City feels unusually calm. Fuyang Building. Li Yan walks into the room, gazing at the chilling blade on the weapon rack. The word substitute one Jing circling dragon. In the air, Li Yan heard the continuous, muffled roars like that of dragons and tigers. The system sound rings again. The bewitching bird devoured Quinniu. The remnants of the soul in the Qigong room. A series of messages also popped up. The powerful skill of the bull demon can be obtained after being devoured by the bewitching bird. It allows for stronger inheritances or other rewards upon settlement. Whether to devour is. The gilded rice paper in Li Yan's hand suddenly ignited with a faint golden flame. Aishio's figure keeps flashing in my mind. Li Yan, this decisive man who would kill to survive, feels a twinge of reluctance for the first time. Reluctant to shatter Aishio's already fragmented dream. To break apart that seemingly warm home. At this moment, Li Yan took out the remaining 3 fragments from his chest. Li Yan fell silent. Are you a soul reluctant to leave your children behind? The hint from Yanfu has become quite clear. You need to use Aishio's mother's soul to complete the tempting bird in the fragment. Aishio, you won't blame Yangu, will you? The totem still retains a hint of a lingering soul. He longs for a trace of his mother's spirit, reluctant to leave her children behind, to complete himself. Every encounter in this world is never a coincidence. I believe you know what you need to do. Looking at the system's prompt. Are you willing? Just a moment ago, Li Yan returned to the apartment after saying goodbye to Ashio and her mother. He picked up the fragment of the bewitching bird's tome. The totem of the bewitching bird. The pure figure of Ashio keeps appearing in my mind. I feel very sorry, but she is already dead, and I have to live on. Such a delicate and beautiful woman is infatuated with you. She pondered whether there really are ghosts and deities in this world. If they really exist, there's no need for me to disturb them, right? What I smelled at Ashio's house was definitely not the stench of fish, but rather the smell of decay. I want to move, Li Yan said, maintaining her tone. She didn't wait for Red Ghost to speak. He directly hung up the phone. Sitting by the bed, Li Yan lit a cigarette. Li Yan said goodbye to Axiu and her daughter, and returned to the apartment. Li Yan stood still for a moment, and dialed Red Ghost's number. Brother Red Ghost, is there any vacant room in the building? In no time, a table of delicious dishes was ready. Li Yan didn't eat much. She only had a bit of vegetables. After a brief conversation, the meal went relatively smoothly. Ah Xiao, brother Yan's giving you 100 yuan. Could you go buy some pork? No need, we have some at home. Li Yan narrowed her eyes. It seemed she sensed something. At this moment, Ah Xiao's mother's voice came from the kitchen. Xiao Yan, stay for dinner. Sure, thanks for the trouble, auntie. Li Yan looked at Ah Xiao, who remained silent with her head down. He smiled and said, Ah Xiao, you're back. I just arrived at your house. Ami ran out. I brought it back. And I helped change the light bulb at your house. Ah Xiao found the door to the house open. She was so scared that her mouth fell open. She hurriedly pushed the door and walked in. Li Yan was standing on a stool, holding the newly replaced light bulb. Li Yan put down the cat. She walked over to fasten the window shut. Who are you looking for? The hoarse radio made Li Yan's hair stand on end. A terrifying face appeared behind Li Yan. And at that moment, sure enough, it was open. Li Yan gently pushed the door. A pungent smell in the room made her frown. The smell of the fish ball processing factory. It stinks so much, and they can't even close the windows properly. Walking through the alley by the apartment, Li Yan still felt a chill. A little cat suddenly brushed against Li Yan's feet. Isn't this the cat from Ah Xiao's house? He glanced at the door of Ah Xiao and her daughter's home. 2 days ago, Red Ghost suggested that Li Yan move to the service building, but Li Yan refused. There's not much time left. He doesn't want to stir up any trouble. It was exactly noon. Wondering if he should have bound him from the start. There wouldn't be so much trouble then. My time left in this world is running out. I hope I won't leave Zhu Di with too much pain. Also, Ashu's matter should be resolved soon. He took one last look at Li Yan. He grabbed his handbag and turned to leave. Watching Zhu Di's retreating figure, Li Yan was a bit dazed. He secretly sighed. We haven't played poker. No one gets hurt. Don't you think I'm quite reasonable? Everything's fine. Zhu Di bit down on his silver teeth, making a crunching sound. I never let you lose money throughout the game. The things you bought for me, I have already packed and sent to your villa. We've been together for about 20 days. If it's not suitable, we should break up. Li Yan silently lit a cigarette. He knew this was not the time for hesitation. He directly said, Sister Zhu Di, what you said really makes me anxious. Let's calculate everything clearly. With a dark tone, he said to Li Yan, you listen to me. As long as I want. Tonight, I can just throw you into the sea to feed the fish. I guarantee that by the next day, there will be no one named Yan Wang in Long City. Do you believe me? Biting his lower lip, he waited for him to explain. But to his surprise, Li Yan had no intention of explaining. Instead, he called for the waiter again. Zhu Di slammed the table and stood up. His eyes almost spat fire. You buy me an $80 wonton noodle soup and then talk about breaking up with me? Li Yan put down the empty bowl she had finished, wiped her mouth, and ignored Zhu Di's words completely. Zhu Di looked at Li Yan, suppressing his anger, angrily said, take back what you just said, and I'll pretend none of this ever happened. I spend millions every night just to support you, and even underwear costs thousands. A marriage arrangement, without any taboos, in a wonton noodle shop. Zhu Di took a deep breath, staring intently at Li Yan. Such a delicate and beautiful woman is offering herself to you. Would you accept it? Just now, Li Yan actually broke up with Zhu Di. Year of the Tiger, June 28th. As a martial artist, how long can you hold on to this resentment? How much longer can you keep it? There are some things you need to let go of in time. All are guests in a foreign land. Crossing mountains and rivers is difficult. Who mourns for the lost traveler? Xiao Zhou has exited. But I am still on stage. Xiao Zhou suddenly called out to Li Yan. Master Li, thank you. Left the room. Li Yan's anger gradually dissipated. A chance encounter. After a while, Li Yan stood up and said goodbye to Xiao Zhou. She was getting ready to leave. As she reached the door, Xiao Zhou shook his head slightly. Take care of yourself, okay? The two sat in silence facing each other. After all, Li Yan and Xiao Zhou didn't have a deep friendship to speak of. The two of them simply admire each other, and looked at Li Yan. You came just to tell me this. Li Yan looked at Xiao Zhou with a serious expression. Yes, I came to say this. After saying that, she placed the cut fruit platter in front of Xiao Zhou. Withdraw. As for this matter, whatever debt you owed them, should be repaid by now. Xiao Zhou gave a weak smile. A few months of bed rest should fix it. Li Yan quietly listened to Xiao Zhou's casual tone, but he understood. My arm is broken. Most of my effort this time has been wasted. Skillfully peeling the apple. How's the injury? No lasting issues, right? Got treatment in time. After reattaching the arm, it might ache when it's cloudy or rainy. Xiao Zhou's gaze stayed on him the whole time. Upon hearing this, he nodded towards Huashan at 9 o'clock. He nodded, and Huashan glared at Li Yan. With a cold face, he walked out. Li Yan picked up the fruit knife from the table. Xiao Zhou was injured by Su Tianxi. This has nothing to do with me. On the head, if you don't mind. Let the two of us martial artists have a moment alone. Li Yan entered. I didn't plan to do that beforehand. Hua Shanjiu suddenly saw Li Yan walking in from the entrance. A bit of displeasure flashed in his eyes. You really had the guts to come here. Brother Jiu, every debt has its debtor. Li Yan is carrying a fruit basket. He just reaches the door of the ward. Then he hears Hua Shanjiu's voice. Xiao Zhou, I see you were seriously injured by that kid. I caused trouble while serving out of anger. How could I not, after leaving the service building? Li Yan asks Red Ghost if he knows which hospital Xiao Zhou is staying at. Red Ghost gives Li Yan a meaningful look. He smiles, saying that there are so few people like Li Yan who value relationships. Hong Kong St. Mary's Hospital. Yushu raised his eyebrows, as if he saw through Li Yan's thoughts. You don't want to work with me? Li Yan was silent for a moment, then suddenly smiled. I certainly need to look after the future pillar of the stage. Li Yan clasped his fists and bowed slightly. Tai Sui is just joking. How am I qualified to be the arena master? I'm just trying to save up a bit for marriage and retire in the countryside. Yushu got up and looked at Li Yan with a smile. Apart from Su Tianxi, there's no one on the Longcheng ring who can fight better than you. That kid is just here for fun. Regardless of who wins or loses between you two, the champion of the 6th category will undoubtedly be you in the future. The energy of a sunny girl radiated from her. Her youthful face was filled with determination and focus. It's hard to believe that such an innocent-looking girl is actually part of a gang. Tai Sui, you were looking for me? Big shots from all over gathered at the walled city. Finally, under pressure from all sides, and the person who kept winning finally chose to make peace. Inside the training room, Yushu's training outfit perfectly showcased her curvy figure. Honggue teased Li Yan, saying, looking sharp, just got back from a date with Zhu Di? From Honggue, he learned that the situation with Lian Sheng had been settled in these past 3 days. Instead, he turned and quietly left Huashan. Zhou Taisui watched as Lian Sheng's men continuously poured into the town. Li Yan sighed, realizing that tonight would not be peaceful. 3 days later, Li Yan arrived at the service building carrying a bunch of shopping bags. As if he hadn't heard a word he said. I'm so angry my teeth are itching. He shouted furiously, 15 days. I'll definitely recover from my injuries in 15 days. Li Yan didn't respond to Su Tianxi's words. He couldn't help but sigh that in this world, there's never any logic to be found. What matters here are human feelings and social norms, not rules. Su Tianxi looked at Li Yan. Once you're on stage, life or death, no regrets. But now he complains about losing and not following the rules. It's really meaningless. Li Yan glanced at him. He's actually going to challenge Li Yan to a duel. Just now, Li Yan safely escorted Su Tianxi out of the Longcheng fortress. Out of danger, Su Tianxi started complaining. He signed a life and death contract before going on stage. Guga shot a fierce glance at Li Yan. A word jumped out from his teeth. Retreat. This little pretty boy is so arrogant. His wounds haven't even healed yet. Like the arrival of death. Tiger looked at Li Yan. Forehead breaking out in cold sweat. You didn't get the gun, right? No, I didn't. More than 10 of us even brought a hunting snare. There's no reason we can't handle this guy. At this moment, Li Yan's face was calm. His whole body exuded a murderous aura. His eyes glowed red. Watching the two people walking over slowly, Brother Gu is also uncertain. The opponent may be skilled, but he was slashed in the stomach by Xiao Zhou. He must be seriously injured. Ah Tai, didn't I tell you to find some Vietnamese to get a shotgun just in case? Hurry up and bring it out. Brother Wu needs time to get the guns from the Vietnamese. You're pushing too hard. We still haven't got them yet. More than a dozen people all stood up, each of them holding a shiny weapon. Li Yan and his companion walked over slowly. The leader of the thugs had a cold glint in his eyes. He asked, little brother. At that moment, the back door of the service building had been locked with chains. A group of people associated with Lian Shang were guarding here, watching for Li Yan's appearance. The leader of the thugs said, they've arrived. Sparse and scattered. She said softly, Sister Judi, I'll be done here soon. I'll call you later. After saying that, she hung up the phone. She said to Su Tianxi, let's go. What the hell are you doing? Why is it so noisy around you? Are you even listening to me? Before Su Tianxi could respond, the phone was snatched away. Following the recoil, he took down the last thug as well. All in a flash. Take care of the 3 people. Su Tianxi is standing aside. The phone in his hand is still ringing. Ian. He immediately threw the phone to Su Tianxi, and his whole body leaped forward in a dive. His right foot landed directly on a thug's face. Then, with a swift somersault, he used the momentum to strike another thug in the chest. Li Yan delivered a side kick. She kicked him hard in the face. Both of them immediately lost consciousness, just as he picked up the fallen machete from the ground. Li Yan, who was still on the phone, saw a group of Lian Shang's men rushing down the stairs with weapons. A shadow flashed by.
A fierce blow struck hard against the man's chin.
The other person noticed.
Instinctively, he reached for the dagger at his waist. Suddenly, the machete before him blurred.
He was also taking Su Tianxi to escape.
Near the stairwell, two people were squatting with Lian Shang.
They were sizing up Li Yan and Su Tianxi. When Su Tianxi walked by,
the two suddenly stood up, wanting to grab Su Tianxi's shoulder. I was waiting when suddenly the phone rang.
Once connected, a resentful voice came through. Where the hell have you been? Have you died somewhere? I'm working here. As Li Yan spoke on the phone with Zhu Di.
I don't want to be turned into minced meat by someone like Lian Shang,
so get up and run away quickly.
Su Tianxi wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth.
He stared at Li Yan. I will definitely return this kick to you. Su Tianxi is kicked 1 meter away, crashing into the wall behind him. Li Yan stands firm. Li Qi coldly says, I think so too.
Then he turns around and continues walking forward.
Li Yan laughed loudly.
He suddenly turned around.
Left leg and side kick.
If a fierce tiger descends the mountain,
it kicks fiercely at Su Tianxi's still bleeding abdomen.
You say you practice traditional martial arts.
Do you believe in martial virtue? Su Tianxi was taken aback. He shook his head. Ha, that kind of thing is outdated. Li Yan suddenly stopped. Although it wasn't for long, Li Yan had already considered Xiao Zhou to be half a friend in his heart. And this Su Tianxi, who severely injured Xiao Zhou. You're still here showing off?
I have been training in martial arts for over a decade. I haven't had this much fun in days. That Xiao Zhou is really impressive. His 9-ring broadsword made my arms feel weak. It's a pity I was still a bit faster. Of course, after receiving a positive answer, Li Yan directly exited the hall through the back door. Meanwhile, the young man following him kept chattering.
My name is Su Tianxi. If I win against you again, there won't be any opponents left in this ring, right? With just one glance,
he scared a group of desperate men into fleeing.
Just a moment ago, Li Yan met the young man who had defeated Xiao Zhou backstage. Can you walk by yourself? The abdomen is the most severely affected. Seeing Li Yan come in, the young man's eyes lit up. He excitedly asked, Are you the king of hell? This man is truly formidable.
Looking at the people inside, he said, Make sure this kid gets out of Kowloon walled city safely.
He can't die right under our noses. In the empty backstage,
there sat a young man with his abdomen wrapped in bandages. His body was covered in scars of various sizes.
No one can guarantee a win. He looked at the red ghost Tai Sui. Who is the young man you're taking away?
The red ghost waved his hand.
He brought Li Yan to the backstage,
and began to cause trouble.
Li Yan glanced at Hua Shanjiu. He obviously didn't want to see this kind of outcome either, but he didn't say much. Once in the ring,
he took 2 stabs in the stomach. His intestines were all over the ground.
We had Hua Shanjiu's men
send him for medical treatment, but the victorious people wanted an explanation. He whispered, Red Ghost.
What happened? Why is there so much commotion?
Red Ghost said grimly, Xiao Zhou lost. His right hand was cut off.
Nobody is leaving here. Hua Shanjiu is quite something. What do you want?
If you want to cause trouble, at least know your own strength. At this moment, Li Yan also arrived. At this moment, on the underground boxing ring, Beishenjiu revealed his well-built muscles.
The Yasha tattoo on his chest.
His eyes bulged in fury. Hundreds of club members surrounded the ring tightly. Hua Shanjiu looked darkly at Tai Sui and said, If I don't kill him today.
Right, go to the ring, take a young man out through the back door. If anyone tries to stop you on the way, beat them to death. Li Yan was stunned. It was actually a call from Tai Sui.
The newly appointed narrator quickly headed upstairs to the ring. At that moment, the phone suddenly rang.
Li Yan glanced at the number.
It was a call from Red Ghost.
The call was filled with noise. A pleasant female voice came through, Yan.
After saying that, he left the ward without looking back.
On the way back, Li Yan was still secretly admiring Zhang Mingyuan's physical endurance.
He took 3 of my sword strikes, a palm and a punch before barely losing his fighting strength.
Is it you who has been playing cat and mouse with me these days? Zhang Mingyuan looked at Li Yan with suspicion. I don't know what you're talking about. That person is definitely not me. And what exactly is your relationship with my sister?
We are old lovers. There are still a few tough battles ahead.
Losing the right arm would be a big problem. This is the best news I've heard today. Li Yan stood up.
She stared intently at Zhang Mingyuan and asked one last thing,
and then said, probably in another hour or 2, my enlightened power will dissipate. Your right arm will be fine. Hearing this, Li Yan visibly relaxed.
And the most efficient way to increase purchasing rights is by killing.
Killing, heh. Li Yan took a deep breath. He didn't say anything. Zhang Mingyuan glanced at Li Yan. Turns out, once the Yen Talisman event is completed, all actions will be tallied. The higher the evaluation, the more Yen Fu points you acquire, the higher your purchasing rights will be. If it really worked, I should be the one lying here. What happens after that? Zhang Mingyuan shot Li Yan a glare.
and grumbled while explaining the rules of the yin talisman. Ran Hongxian naturally trusted him. At this moment, the small figure of the gecko attacked again. The blade of eternal damnation was raised high, determined to dismember them all. Pei Lai swiftly picked up Ran Hongxia and Kailan, bringing hundreds of people just to stir up trouble. Just now, Ran Hongxia didn't hesitate at all. Along the way, she was grateful to Pei Lai. Li Yan pondered for a moment. It seems there should be more than one guide. Then Li Yan asked the question he most wanted to know at the moment, after completing the Yanfu incident. What kind of reward will I get? This man is so arrogant. Zhang Mingyuan answered somewhat dejectedly, was it a fat guy who brought you in? Zhang Mingyuan was taken aback. He replied, no, it was someone else who brought me in. She's a beautiful woman I will never forget for the rest of my life. Sure enough, it has coordinated with the knife master Lu Yanqing. He reached into Zhang Mingyuan's arms and took out 2 fragments. Then he directly asked, is this your first time participating in the Yanfu incident? It's the second time. Wei Wuyin has already realized that this setup might be specifically aimed at killing him. Suddenly, the wall lizard attacks Wei Wuyin from the side. Its petite figure is quite mismatched with the huge stone knife. With a single strike, the blade shatters the stone and heads straight for Wei Wuyin. Wei Wuyin gasped in amazement. Is this what eternal torment looks like? Surprisingly, the demon blades do not devour each other. 2 knife masters and 3 others who might become knife masters. A small figure on the wall limps along, dragging a stone pillar with a fierce and menacing blade. The sharp sound of iron chains clinks loudly, more chilling than the soul snatching of the king of hell. At this moment, Li Yan slowly walked into the infirmary. She looked at Zhang Mingyuan lying on the bed. Having sustained such a serious injury, she surprisingly seemed completely fine now. It seems that this inheritance really has a strong effect on improving the body. At this moment, Wei Wuyin knew that the knife master, Lu Yanqing, was seriously injured. The situation that was just standing in their favor was suddenly reversed. Su Tianxi smiled slightly. He knew he had one. You take them back behind me. Wait until I resolve the poison. Then I will tell you how to detoxify. Immediately, Wei Wuyin raised the red eyes again, to fight the ghost. If the poison isn't cured within 12 hours, she will become a Crimson Eye Blade Master. And the 1,000 intestine threads don't only target those who wield the blade. Even inhaling the slightest trace can result in poisoning. The 2 girls, Huang Ying and Kailan, are probably already poisoned, with no way to escape. Secondly, this Crimson Eye contains a deadly poison called 1,000 intestine threads, specifically targeting women. Miss Ran, to save me, fought the blade corpse while holding the Crimson Eye. I'm afraid she's already been poisoned. Su Tianxi was also struck in the chest by Xiao Zhou's knife. Using the momentum of the blade, Su Tianxi hurriedly stepped back, to avoid this fatal blow. Xiao Zhou saw that Su Tianxi had retreated to the edge of the ring. Leaves Su Tianxi terrified. He keeps retreating. Suddenly, Su Tianxi's blade thrust straight at Xiao Zhou's face. Xiao Zhou couldn't dodge in time, and left a wound on his face. Relentlessly pursuing, Su Tianxi hurriedly retreats. His plum blossom footwork pushed to the limit. Xiao Zhou's strikes come faster and faster. The Taiji plum blossom mantis steps combined with the 9-ring broadsword. He jumps back, twisting his body, defending his whole body. Xiao Zhou holds his sword with both hands, raising it high, each strike more vicious than the last. In an instant, Xiao Zhou delivers a total of 21 strikes. Xiao Zhou's strikes are fierce. Su Tianxi can only defend passively at this point, using 2 blades to block the single blade. Xiao Zhou blocks with a large knife. Both sides engage fiercely without holding back. Figures flicker. It's another fast-paced battle, with a series of clashing sounds, and for a moment, she and the blade master were evenly matched. Pei Lai saw the dazed look in her eyes, ignoring the gaping wounds. Just like Hyasan had been before, the twin knives rise. They exchanged several blows. Suddenly, Ran Hongxia leaped into the air. Ignoring her injuries, she fought with even more vigor. The red and blue blades flashed in the air, each move full of dominance. Su Tianxi's 8-blade focuses on speed. Both sides counter with speed. In an instant, after the first exchange, Xiao Zhou's gaze slightly hardened. He knew this opponent was no ordinary one, no longer underestimating the opponent. The 9-ring broadsword is swung with great force. The blade is relatively short. The blade is slightly narrow. The edge is sharp for direct thrusts. The techniques are ruthless. Each strike is deadly. The battle between Xiao Zhou and Su Tianxi finally began. Su Tianxi also revealed his weapon, the 8-knife. The 8-knife is a set of knife techniques in Wing Chun. It is both a knife technique and the name of the knife. Without responding, instead, he cupped his hands in salute. Lu Jia Quan Zhou Weitao. The young man returned the salute with a formal fist gesture. Wing Chun Su Tianxi. And smiled as he said, step into the ring. Life or death, it doesn't matter.
Xiao Zhou pressed his lips together and let out a cold laugh, but rather wielding a large 9-ring broadsword. Standing across from him was a young man with delicate features, about 18 or 19 years old. It was hard to imagine he was someone ruthless. The young man looked at Xiao Zhou. In the 10 matches, his opponents are either dead or severely injured. Don't hold back. Xiao Zhou smiled lightly and said, I've never held back. It's just that there's no need to go to extremes. In the arena, Xiao Zhou wasn't holding a paper tiger. Xiao Zhou was warming up outside the ring. Behind him, Hua Shanjiu is introducing Xiao Zhou to a man in sunglasses. The agent is still advising Xiao Zhou. This kid is not ordinary. His moves are extremely ruthless. Can't you just speak normally? Why pretend to be a scholar? Do you really think I'm with you for your money? You clearly have a mixed reputation. And yet, you're trying to educate me. After speaking, he left without hesitation. Li Yan opened his mouth. Integrity is not corrupted by wealth, nor by power, nor by poverty. That the match was about to begin. Xiao Zhou slowly walked towards the door, suddenly turned back and said to Li Yan, Gongsun Yan, Zhang Yi, became true men. Li Yan does have quite a bit of admiration. In this era where traditional martial arts is in decline, experts like Xiao Zhou are already as rare as phoenix feathers. At that moment, one of the guys outside notified Xiao Zhou, don't get caught off guard. Li Yan has a rebellious nature. He rarely respects peers in the martial arts world, but towards this stubborn, cold on the outside, warm on the inside Zhou. Who are you up against? A Wing Chun brat. Li Yan licked his lips. He turned around and looked at Xiao Zhou. Watch your step. When you dropped your sword, I was really afraid you'd lose. Xiao Zhou's voice suddenly sounded behind Li Yan. Li Yan softly said, aren't you too free to come and watch my match specifically? Inside the bathroom, Li Yan endured the excruciating pain as he set his dislocated arm back in place, looking at himself in the mirror. Li Yan secretly thought, if I win one more match, I will complete the first task. In the private room, the red ghost let out a heavy sigh. His anxious heart finally settled. Meanwhile, Zhu Di had a mocking expression on his face. Soaked in fragrant sweat, I said to the red devil, you go out for a moment. Make sure to close the door when you leave. Then he directly threw Zhang Mingyuan off the stage. Zhang Mingyuan crashed heavily to the ground. He got up, unwillingly asking, how do you have the twisting legs of the stab the foot gate? Li Yan heard Zhang Mingyuan's question. Gritting his teeth, he replied, go home and ask your sister. Li Yan fell silent for a moment. He grabbed Zhang Mingyuan by the collar and said fiercely, you broke my right hand. It hasn't healed in a month. This will have endless consequences. I should kill you to vent my anger. Its intensity and danger far exceeded other matches. Li Yan suddenly withdrew the sword that was lodged by Zhang Mingyuan's neck. A pair of indifferent eyes stared at Zhang Mingyuan and asked, who are you exactly? Zhang Mingyuan's expression was already somewhat dazed at this point. He involuntarily replied, it's my sister. The sword in his hand followed the momentum downward. The sharp, unparalleled blade pressed toward Zhang Mingyuan's throat. It was clear the match was over. A deafening roar erupted from the stands. Though the fight was brief, Zhang Mingyuan, struck in the chest, spat out a mouthful of blood. Immediately, Li Yan turned her fist into a claw, grabbing Zhang Mingyuan's shoulder, and pinned him to the ground. With his left hand, he swiftly seized it. Li Yan's right foot directly stomped on his shin bone. It turned out to be the silk twisting leg, a special move from the Chuojio style. At the same time, Li Yan raised her palm. Taking advantage of this opening, she threw a fierce punch at Zhang Mingyuan. Zhang Mingyuan realized something was wrong. He immediately realized that being a traitor was not his strong suit. Using Li Yan's force, he tried to use his footwork to push Li Yan back. Unexpectedly, as soon as his calf was lifted, his body swayed like a ghost, evading Zhang Mingyuan's attack. In an instant, he was in front of Zhang Mingyuan. His right foot stepped forward. He turned around and raised his left hand in the 8 trigrams palm 64 secret defensive stance, not disturbing his clothes. His fist slammed hard into Zhang Mingyuan's chest. Li Yan stared at Zhang Mingyuan with an utterly indifferent gaze. He activated the power of the clear enlightenment beast. No matter how domineering it is, it must hit to count. Faced with Zhang Mingyuan's offensive, Li Yan twisted his foot to the right. Li Yan had his right arm crippled by a kick from Zhang Mingyuan. Zhang Mingyuan's right foot is surrounded by the power of the enlightened beast. A faint red light radiates. He then kicks the fierce sword up. With one hand, he lunges straight at Li Yan. The situation turns in an instant. The battle between Li Yan and Zhang Mingyuan reaches a boiling point. Zhang Mingyuan activates the power of the enlightened beast inheritance. Can Li Yan achieve victory? Just now, a powerful kick lands on Li Yan's shoulder. A sharp pain suddenly shoots through his right arm. Li Yan realizes that his right arm seems to be ruined. He is also knocked several meters away by the immense force. He crashes heavily against the edge of the ring. 30% of that in melee. Li Yan, overwhelmed by pain, loosened his grip, and the Han sword fell to the ground. Zhang Mingyuan's foot had just touched the ground. The ankle exerts force and spins. There was now a new inheritance of the Kybird beast. The Wrath Spirit imbues the power of the resonating beast with every move. Each attack will burn the opponent's soul. It can be applied to any weapon. For ranged attacks, the effect is only. You confronted the power of the Kybird beast. You obtained some information. Would you like to spend one language point to view it? It appeared on the system dialog box. At this moment, Zhang Mingyuan's status had changed to Fury Spirit skill. A concealed kick sweeps the floor. Li Yan's chin takes the hit. His body tilts backward. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth. The system notification sounded. Zhang Mingyuan rises with the momentum. His heel kicks against Li Yan. A spinning aerial back kick. Northern toe kick. Pure speed with precision. The immense force caused the Han sword to fall once more. It smashed heavily onto the boxing platform. At that moment, in Zhang Mingyuan's eyes, an ancient fierce beast appeared. Today's victory or defeat is determined at this moment. Quickly exerted more force. The falling Han sword struck like a furious blow. He raised his head and charged towards Zhang Mingyuan again. Zhang Mingyuan leaped into the air. His feet landed directly on the blade of the sword. But when Zhang Mingyuan's arm was in the middle of the swing, not only did he not retreat, he took advantage of the falling Han sword, and charged towards Li Yan. Seeing this, Li Yan flipped and landed. Before Zhang Mingyuan could catch his breath, the domineering Han sword was already coming down on his head. Zhang Mingyuan couldn't dodge in time. A long cut appeared on his right arm, and thrusts upward. Zhang Mingyuan saw the situation turning bad. If he didn't dodge, he would definitely be split in two. Helpless, he twisted in midair. In midair, his left foot steps on Li Yan's sword-wielding hand. His right foot sidekicks Li Yan's face. Li Yan supports himself with his right hand on the ground, twists his waist. The Han sword traces a circular arc. He tossed it off the stage. He ducked low and charged forward. The eight-sided fierce sword in his hand swept towards Zhang Mingyuan's legs with a violent aura. Zhang Mingyuan leaps forward, dodging Li Yan's attack. Zhang Mingyuan's life is worthless. What he can't tolerate is losing face in front of Zhu Di. In contrast, Zhu Di was smiling, without a trace of worry. All previous concerns were gone. On stage, Li Yan threw the blue mask in his hand. His weapon was seized. In the VIP box upstairs, He Changhong saw Zhang Mingyuan's defeat. His face darkened. In his eyes, his left arm was still slashed by the fierce sword, leaving a long wound. Blood continuously dripped onto the ground. Just one round. In the blink of an eye, Zhang Mingyuan's left arm was injured. Hajinli family's dual mastery of sword and spear, battling with the sword mother stance 24, hiding the moon style. Li Yan gripped the fierce sword in his right hand. With his left hand, he grabbed the blue-faced coward. Finally, he let out a sigh of relief. Although Zhang Mingyuan had just avoided Li Yan's deadly attack, it was almost instinctive. Zhang Mingyuan relied on his incredible waist strength to execute a bridge pose. He quickly jumped back. He distanced himself from Li Yan. He pointed at Zhang Mingyuan's wrist acupoint. Zhang Mingyuan winced in pain. The blue-faced lock slipped from his hand. Li Yan took this opportunity to swing his sword. He rushed towards Zhang Mingyuan's face. He was taken aback. Indeed, he couldn't underestimate any opponent. His left hand slightly bent, with fingers together, forming a beak shape. Seeing the critical situation, Zhang Mingyuan twisted his wrist. He tightly gripped the blue blade and spun around, aiming directly for Li Yan's temple. Li Yan hurriedly sidestepped to avoid, but still got a cut on his face. He raised his sword to slash at Zhang Mingyuan's left arm. The blade glimmered with a cold light. If this strike succeeded, Zhang Mingyuan would at least lose his left arm. At worst, he would be disarmed. The back of his hand struck the smoke rod directly. The immense force at the point of contact made Zhang Mingyuan loosen his fingers. The attack was deflected. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Li Yan tightly gripped the fierce sword. Zhang Mingyuan gripped his pipe with one hand, and exerted force with one leg. With a leap, the blue-faced old man rushed straight at Li Yan's face. Li Yan flicked his left hand, curling his fingers into a hook. Follow me for more exciting content in the next episode. The battle between the lean tiger of Hejian and the young boy from the Ximen clan has finally begun. But just when the lean tiger of Hejian had the upper hand, his right arm was crippled by a single blow. Just moments ago, then suddenly exerts force with one leg, bursting out in an instant. A cold glint in his eyes, his hand shoots straight at Li Yan's face. The battle has officially begun. Which one is truly stronger? And introduced themselves. Shiziman Zhang Mingyuan, Hejian, Li Yan.
Zhang Mingyuan grips the pipe with one hand, his legs slightly bent. He draws a circle on the ground with his right leg. He saw that Li Yan's mastery of ancient martial arts was as high as 81%, a full 12 percentage points higher than his own. In his heart, he knew that this time he had to give his all. Only then would he have a chance to win. They cupped their hands to each other in respect.
The pipe has been passed down. For fingers wide, the ends are wrapped in cast iron. The mouthpiece is shaped like a bird.
His posture slightly bent. He thought of the fleeting glimpse earlier.
Could it be that I was mistaken?
At this moment, Zhang Mingyuan also stepped onto the stage.
He ripped off the cloak, holding the blue-faced elder in his hand. The pole is 90 centimeters long. It's no problem. On the viewing platform, Yushu sat among the crowd. He thought to himself, traitors are the most exhausting. In his condition, he simply can't hold on. But that guy doesn't seem like a fool looking for death. Where did you get this sword? Is it reliable?
The red ghost said calmly, don't worry.
Sister Zhu, this is the private collection of the Tai Sui. I've seen Bloodthirsty Rage, City Wall Giant Dragon in 8 big characters. Li Yan prepared for action. The swordsman secretly thought it was indeed a good sword. In the stands, Zhu Di looked worried. With some unease, he asked Hong Gue. Li Yan wielded a formidable sword.
It was 1.3 meters long.
3 fingers wide, its blade gleamed with a spiritual glow. The blood groove was dark and ominous.
The blade is engraved with the words the might of 10,000 spears. And a strong stench came out of the room.
Axia walked into the room with a vacant look in her eyes.
The 24th of June in the year of Bingyin, the day for rituals, burial, fasting, teaching, and the grand building service.
Underground arena.
The stands were already packed with people.
Then he left. Li Yan was somewhat confused by Ashio's attitude,
but he didn't think too much about it.
When Ashio returned home, she opened the door. I'll see if I can get them working.
I also need to pay a visit to Aunt Xia. Ashio suddenly lowered her head.
His expression was somewhat gloomy.
He directly rejected Li Yan.
By the way, Ashio, I noticed that your house hasn't had the lights on at night lately. You've been using candles instead. Is it because the light bulbs are broken? If you'd like, I can help fix them.
She specially made you some char siu.
Thank you for taking care of me. Li Yan didn't stand on ceremony either. Sometimes he comes back late.
Ashio's mother always brings him some food.
Suddenly someone knocked on the door. He opened the door.
Ashio's pure and slightly shy face appeared in front of Li Yan.
She handed the lunchbox to Li Yan and said, Brother Yan, Mom heard that you live alone.
Walking on the way back to the apartment, Li Yan covered his nose and mumbled, why is the smell of fishballs in this alley getting stronger and stronger?
It's really unbearable. After getting home, just about to rest, will Taishui watch me fight tomorrow?
Red Ghost asked, a little puzzled.
Maybe, depends on his schedule. Why? Li Yan took a hard gulp of wine.
With a serious face, he said you must make him watch me finish this match.
Hong Gue smiled self-deprecatingly. Taishui said the same thing.
He really said if you're not in shape, don't fight.
Li Yan stared into Red Ghost's eyes, and said seriously. Li Yan felt that the concern from Hong Gue was sincere.
He thought to himself that if he could really live here, it might be a good choice after all. Then he smiled and said to Hong Gue, Brother Hong Gue,
your personality really isn't suited for being a boss. I don't mind. You've only been in the city battle for a few days. I don't want to be cleaning up your corpse so soon. If it really doesn't work, let's take a break for a while. I'll handle things with Zhu Di. Seeing Li Yan's casual demeanor, Red Ghost's heart grew heavier. Taisui said when watching you box, that you seemed weak and irritable,
or perhaps plagued by a serious illness.
If you don't want to tell me about it, I know my own body. Li Yan looks at Hong Gue, and thinks to himself, Hong Gue is not bad, whether he's sincere or not.
He does take good care of me.
Feeling a bit uneasy, he asked, did you go for the checkup I told you about a while ago? Did you? Li Yan takes the cigarette, and says softly, Hong Gue, there's no need to be so long-winded. In the evening, Red Ghost took Li Yan to an ice room downstairs. They sat across from each other. Neither of them spoke. The atmosphere was a bit heavy. Red Ghost knew Li Yan's opponent this time wasn't an ordinary character. How will it end?
Follow me, and I'll help you understand this divine work.
Just how underestimated is this battle? It hasn't even started yet.
Someone already wants the protagonist to quit the competition.
At least over a meter long. The best height is 1.3 meters.
The Red Demon said seriously, no problem.
I'll get ready. Zhang Mingyuan is about to duel with Li Yan. There are quite a few weapons. What should I choose? After thinking for a moment,
Li Yan spoke, Brother Red Ghost, help me prepare a long sword.
I'll have the Red Ghost prepare it for you. At this moment, Li Yan roughly understood what was going on. It seemed that the blonde man who just left was Zhang Mingyuan's backer. This time, it seems like it's a weapon duel. Zhang Mingyuan's weapon is the blue-faced Chiman in Bagwazang.
Entering the room, he saw Zhu Di standing by the window. The red ghost was leaning on the sofa, silent.
When Li Yan walked in, Zhu Di softly asked, "Hey Yan, what kind of weapon do you need?" Li Yan let out a strange laugh and said, "The king of hell, huh? I'll see who it is tomorrow." After saying this, he took the arm of a charming woman next to him and left. Li Yan was taken aback,
and Li Yan, who had already left, also realized that the person who had been holding a fragment, moving near and far, wasn't Zhang Mingyuan.
Just as he returned to the entrance of Zhu Di's private room, a blond man walked out from inside. He looked him up and down.
His heart skipped a beat, and a slight cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Li Yan walked straight past Zhang Mingyuan,
saying, "See you in the ring tomorrow."
As soon as he finished speaking, Zhang Mingyuan finally felt his tense heart settle down.
"Your experience is too shallow. Rather than getting entangled with an old hand like me, it's better to settle it cleanly in the ring. Are you afraid I won't take the challenge?" Zhang Mingyuan's thoughts were immediately seen through by Li Yan.
Zhang Mingyuan became a bit anxious.
Once again asked if Li Yan would agree. Li Yan let out a light snort and said, "In Kowloon Walled City, there are all kinds of people. The game between us can become extremely complex."
Although you have practiced martial arts since childhood,
how does Li Yan know that if she loses the entire competition in the Yanfu incident, she will disregard the gambling ban and directly return? She will no longer be able to interfere with anything happening in the Yanfu incident. She really is betting everything. Seeing that Li Yan remained silent, "I don't trust people. Besides, my factory boss and the woman from your factory don't get along well either. Let's settle this with a fight on stage. Lose everything. Take everything if you win. Hand over the 2 fragments you have. I'll come find you with the remnants of the hypnotic bird. Take this time to earn some more points. Just be ready to go. So, how about it?"
Zhang Mingyuan slowly said, "I'm not one to work with others." She stood about 2 or 3 meters behind Li Yan.
She didn't make a sound. Li Yan said directly, "I don't like beating around the bush. Everyone is here for their own reasons. We don't need to inquire about each other's backgrounds. There are at most 5 fragments. So who gets more, who gets less? That's hard to separate."
At that moment, the door on the rooftop was suddenly pushed open. Zhang Mingyuan walked over slowly.
But it's not specified that one person has to complete it.
In principle, this task can be completed in collaboration with that person called Wu Er. However, the Salt Lake incident has also shown that
the more fragments you get, the higher the reward. Killing a companion will not grant any rewards. I checked the progress of my current expedition.
For Category 7, I just need to win 2 more matches. As for the ancient novel, The Scroll of Dust, I only have 2 fragments of it.
There are no clues on how to awaken the remnants of the bewitching bird. Nothing else is known.
The term companion refers to those walking along the same path. It refers to those who may have conflicting interests, but share the same goal. They are fellow travelers.
Is actually a ruthless killer who doesn't even blink. On the rooftop of the Fui building,
Li Yan quietly analyzed the situation before him. The companion he just discovered is named Zhang Mingyuan. The only information he knows so far is that Zhang possesses the skill glimpse and is 69% proficient in ancient martial arts. Both of them simultaneously cast a glance. The systems on both sides beeped at the same time. "You have discovered a fellow traveler.
Can you believe it?
This young, innocent-looking boy in front of me." The person in 52 has removed their light rail mask,
revealing a young and tender face. Their eyes look in disbelief at Li Yan behind the glass of the 4th-level compartment. Li Yan smiles, shaping his lips to say hello.
At that moment, a system voice suddenly rang out. "The location of the ancient novel Record of Dust has been reported.
Please take note and receive it." Li Yan was startled. He quickly walked to the window and looked down at the boxing ring below. Taking advantage of this moment, Zhu Di escaped from Li Yan's arms, muttering softly, "Bastard, trying to flirt with me? You're still too green." Seriously said, "When I say 120%, I mean 120%. Zhu Di looked at Li Yan, closed his eyes, lightly kissed Li Yan on the cheek, like a dragonfly touching water. Li Yan was suddenly stunned. He thought Li Yan was joking. Then he picked up the videotape on the table to show Li Yan his usual boxing moves. Li Yan directly pressed down on his hand. He hugged Zhu Di from behind. "How confident are you in facing him?" Li Yan said with a smile that wasn't quite a smile. This made Zhu Di a bit unhappy. "Then I must be 120% sure." Zhu Di chuckled. He whispered, "This newcomer is called Wu Er. They call him He Changhong in the arena. He is quite arrogant. To be honest, a yen." It was actually the blue-faced old man. "This is the unique weapon of the Northern Shuajiao Fancy Fist, though it looks very similar to a smoking pipe, but it is a truly deadly weapon." Zhu Di stood beside Li Yan. The entire thing is made of cast iron, glistening with sweat, dripping with fresh blood. It looks very eerie. Li Yan was somewhat surprised. His opponent stands nearby.
He is not tall, wearing a sinister-looking light rail mask. The weapon in his hand resembles a smoking pipe. The exterior of the pot has a steel blade. At this time, on the stage, a match had just ended. A man collapses on the ground. A large amount of blood spurts from the wound on his neck. It's clear he won't survive. Then I pulled Li Yan to the window. I whispered, "Do you know? A lot of newcomers have come to Kowloon Walled City recently. They're all fierce." Then I nodded towards the arena below. "But still not as beautiful as you, Zhu Di." Zhu Di said nothing, just looked at Li Yan, silently thinking to himself, Tai Sui must have something to make Red Ghost so devoted to him. I can make Li Yan bow down just the same. "First time meeting you?" The boss behind the scenes. "What do you think, beautiful?" Li Yan said seriously, "He's my big boss." "Of course, she's beautiful." Li Yan picked up a glass of wine and handed it to Zhu Di. He chuckled lightly and said, "Although we've only known each other for a short time, this is the first time I've seen you lose your temper like this." Zhu Di took the glass and asked with a sour expression, "Li Yan, I have plans with Ai Yan. There's something else." He then grabbed Li Yan and left. They entered a private room. Zhu Di angrily threw the handbag on the floor. He said furiously, "This woman must have called me like that on purpose. Mrs. Deng is right. I'll remember that. Mrs. Deng, if you have any good cosmetics, don't forget to recommend them to me." Hearing these repeated Mrs. Dengs, Zhu Di said, displeased, "Of course." Madame Deng and Zhu Di had the same expression, but Zhu Di still forced a smile and said, "Long time no see. Tai Sui is still as beautiful as ever. But you know, women, they still need to dress up a bit. I thought you were just some fool here to have fun. Everyone at the service tower calls me Tai Sui. You can call me that too from now on." Then he looked at Zhu Di and said, "Long time no see." She sat down right next to Li Yan. She hooked her arm around Li Yan's. She said, "You don't even recognize your boss's boss? Didn't Hong Gue tell you?" Yushu tilted her head and looked at Li Yan. "So you're Hong Gue's pride? Not even recognize his own subordinates?" Zhu Di walked over with a cheerful expression, her curvaceous figure, and enchanting face, attracting the attention of all the gamblers around. "You should at least introduce yourself first." Before Li Yan could say anything, a voice full of charm came through. "His name is Li Yan. How could the illustrious Tai Sui of Kowloon Walled City?" Just now, Li Yan looked at Yushu beside him in shock. He never expected that his boss's boss would be a woman. Yushu looked at Li Yan, smiled softly, and said, "Even if you're surprised." Li Yan felt a sudden jolt in her heart. "Are you joking? This girl is actually Tai Sui. Can you believe it? The mastermind behind Kowloon Walled City is actually a cheerful girl." Li Yan pondered for a moment. She asked the lady about Fong Ming. The woman tilted her head. Smiling kindly, she looked at Li Yan and said, "My surname is Yu. I'm called Yu Shu. People in the Five Elements refer to me as Tai Sui, and I also didn't pay attention to his appearance. I only remember that his technique is an authentic Bagui Zhang. It should be derived from a few schools in the north. This person might be possessed by evil spirits. Brother, if you want to buy him, you should be cautious." Then Li Yan tentatively asked, "About the one you mentioned earlier, the one who fights Bagwazang in the ring. Have you seen him fight? Can you introduce it to me?" The woman gently cupped her face. She whispered that he didn't hit today. Li Yan's heart sank suddenly. She opened her mouth and asked, "Do you really enjoy watching boxing?" The young lady seemed to have a deep understanding of traditional martial arts. The woman smiled softly. "In my youth, I studied under the famous Bagwazang master Zhang Qinjing. I can be considered a successor of cinematic Bagwazang. He was a paper tiger. If this man could see through his facade, the outcome would still be uncertain." Listening to the woman's murmurs, seeing that Xiao Zhou has already won, the woman muttered again, saying that the old man under the red ghost who practiced Bagui Zhang was fierce and astonishing. He was above this person, but lacked real strength. The veteran loses balance, exposing a flaw. Xiao Zhou throws a powerful punch, directly knocking the opponent away, securing the victory. It is also known for its beauty as Wensheng Fist. So when women mention Wensheng Fist, they are referring to Du Family Fist. At this moment, Xiao Zhou has already gained the upper hand. Step with the right foot, knees press against the opponent's knee pit. Life can blend the two to this extent. This can be considered a masterful achievement. This guy can be regarded as a genius. Let me explain. Xiao Zhou introduces himself, saying that Du Family Fist is one of the 4 famous boxing styles from Shandong. The camera can't capture it. The moves are indeed Tai Chi, Cicada, Dragon, Crying Eye from Plum Blossom Praying Mantis. Wensheng Fist excels at long strikes, but the Dama Praying Mantis Fist isn't clear. Li Yan was taken aback. He smiled and said, "Not many women like drinking baijiu. Bad habits are hard to break." The woman calmly watched the two on the ring. She slowly began to speak. "What he's using is the Wensheng Fist." The perfect body proportions were on full display. The woman sat down next to Li Yan. She took a small porcelain bottle from her pocket and drank it in one gulp. The strong aroma of alcohol filled the air. With long, elegant eyes, a long ponytail that reached her waist, Li Yan smiled slightly at the woman, not minding. The woman lazily stretched her body. Her long, slender legs had not an ounce of extra fat. A slender, fair hand patted Li Yan on the shoulder. "Buddy, you don't mind if I sit next to you, right?" Li Yan looked up and saw a woman dressed in sportswear. Her features were delicate. In terms of weapons, Xiaozhou's paper tigers were at a disadvantage, but judging from the current situation, Xiaozhou still had the upper hand. Just as Li Yan was watching intently watching the match below, it was Xiaozhou and a Vietnamese veteran facing off. They were dueling with weapons. The veteran held two tri-edged military bayonets in his hands, while Xiaozhou led a squad of paper tigers. One of the four kings of Wing Chun, he had a 32-win streak at the Kowloon Walled City ring, beating everyone to the point no one dared to step into the ring again. At the underground boxing ring in Fuk Yik building, Li Yan was sitting in the stands. He is the top boxing promoter in Kowloon Walled City. Looking at the information on the table, Liao Zhizhou softly remarked that Tai Sui met him in person, mainly because of his grandfather, Su Shangtian. Su Shangtian was a direct disciple of Yip Man, and carefully reading them, he asks the middle-aged man across from him. Su Tianxi actually had Tai Sui meet him in person. What's the story behind this? The middle-aged man is named Liao Zhizhong. The powerful force hits the wall. It creates a huge sound. At this moment, in a luxury box of the service building, Red Ghost is holding a stack of documents. Her palms were positioned one forward and one backward. Her feet shifted and locked. Suddenly, she exerted force. The inner energy flowed freely. The wind from the punch is like a dragon. The next day, when Li Yan opened her eyes again, each breath is filled with a refreshing sensation. There is no longer any trace of illness in my body. It's as if I have fully recovered. Li Yan stood up. That would be troublesome. I directly spent 10 extension points to buy the hematopoietic cell enhancer. This stuff works immediately. Li Yan soon felt her eyelids becoming heavy. Slowly, she fell asleep. I estimate that those who can walk the path of extension are all formidable individuals. Right now, there aren't many points left. I can only buy the hematopoietic cell enhancer first, to prevent falling ill throughout the entire region. He will sneak over again. It seems that the one who controls the fragment is aware of my existence. That means I am not the only one walking the path of extension in this world. The other party is being very cautious. It seems they are not easy to deal with. What exactly is Yen Fu? And then there's this person holding a fragment. As soon as I get close, he moves away. I ignore him. Could they really exist? If not, that fat guy really brought me to this Kowloon Walled City. The effect of that fleeting glance was indeed magical. And that person who calls himself Yen Fu walks around, turned out to be the mastermind behind Longqing's underground empire. At this moment, Li Yan held two pieces of fragments in his hand, murmuring to himself, the bewitching bird, Qi Gongshi and that fat man who calls himself Mo. They must all be gods or demons from Chinese mythology, right? Duration, 1 minute. Though I didn't catch them. At least I confirmed there are still 2 fragments in the walled city. Can you believe it? This sunny and delicate girl next door. Yin focused intently on the target and sprinted, chased after them, ran through 7 or 8 alleys. The system sound played again. Report ended. The system prompted that the location of the fragment of the ancient novel Gochen Lu has been reported. Please pay attention to receive it. A 3-dimensional map suddenly appeared before him. It was the complete geographical layout of Kowloon Walled City. The target was only 100 meters away from him. Zhu Di noticed, and chuckled softly. The dinner ended. Li Yan walked alone in the dark alley. Suddenly, a scorching pain surged in his chest. I was incredibly excited. Li Yan uncontrollably swallowed, and instinctively leaned back. This woman really wasn't ordinary. With just a few words, she had him completely flustered. I beckoned to Li Yan with my finger. Leaning forward, I shyly licked my lips at Li Yan. A breath of fragrant air sprayed onto Li Yan's face. I gently said, that day was the first time I saw you boxing. He continued to speak of bloodlust and violence. Some people feel fear or even disgust in the face of these, but there are also those who are deeply fascinated by it, and I belong to the latter. After saying this, a blush appeared on my face. Saying this, she lifted her high heel. She hooked Li Yan's pants leg. Zhu Di tilted his head. His palm supported his face. He gazed at Li Yan dreamily, gazing at Li Yan with a dazed expression. He smiled slightly and said, though it's a bit harsh, I like honest people. If you really kidnapped me, it's just as simple as wanting money. This woman is worth billions. If you're desperate, just kidnap her. Take a bit and you'll live comfortably for the rest of your life. Zhu Di looked startled for a moment. Zhu Di didn't answer Li Yan's question.
Instead, he asked Li Yan what she thought when Hong Gui introduced him. It was probably something like, "The big investor from Dragon City, right? What did you think when you saw me?" Li Yan lazily lit a cigarette and said, "I thought." Looking at Zhu Di's handsome face, Li Yan gently asks Zhu Di how much he knows about her. "How much do you really know about me? I can understand why someone would spend money to support a fighter. But I really can't understand why a woman would invite a murderer who just killed 4 people to dinner. At night in a high-end restaurant." Li Yan and Zhu Di sit across from each other. Zhu Di looks at the suit he personally picked out for Li Yan with satisfaction, but Li Yan feels a deep pang in her heart. The price of this suit is actually comparable to a yes-cell enhancer. Manhua hurriedly added that they are worth billions. Long legs, big chest, and a pretty face. They're pursuing you, and you're still not interested. Just like that, Zhu Di linked arms with Li Yan. Like a couple shopping together. Otherwise, how could you get out so quickly? Zhu Di paid your bail. Waiting for you outside. Make sure to thank them properly. Looking at Li Yan's unwilling expression. Looks like I need to explore other options. After leaving the police station, I saw the Red Ghost waiting for him. Thank you for your trouble. Brother Red Ghost has connections with the Tai Sui. The more fragments obtained, the greater the rewards during settlement. Fortunately, if the fragments appear within 5 kilometers, the system will issue a notification. It would be like looking for a needle in a haystack. According to the system's mission prompt, the most important aspect of this event is to awaken the remnants of the bewitched bird's soul. If the mission fails, this mission will have all points and purchasing privileges erased. Unexpectedly, by some twist of fate, the seemingly lost fragments actually yielded 2 pieces. Will the remaining 3 pieces be sold off by them? And I unexpectedly obtained 2 pieces. This officially initiated the current extended event. After giving her statement, Li Yan sat on a bench in the corridor, processing the information she just learned. It turns out that Anton's group had robbed the bank, and a batch of antiques was stolen. Those fragments were supposed to have 5 pieces for auction. Such a delicate beauty. Has such peculiar hobbies. Just moments ago, Li Yan took down 4 ruthless criminals in just a few minutes, and arrived at the Longcheng police station. No insights into the target's weaknesses. 5 points of delay points consumed. You have. The target is dead. Can you believe it? The dark muzzle of the gun pointed directly at Li Yan. Bang! A gunshot rang out. The entire room fell silent. A system voice echoed in Li Yan's mind. The glimpse status lasted 9 minutes and 43 seconds. Xiao Jin's death bought He Anon valuable time. At this moment, he had already managed to grab the gun on the ground. Li Yan leaped forward. The scalpel in his hand stabbed downwards, but He Anon raised his arm. Suddenly, Li Yan felt her legs were unsteady. The little Jean on the bed was actually hugging her legs tightly. She wanted to buy He Anon some time to escape. Li Yan turned around and waved her hand. The reverse-gripped scalpel stabbed into Xiao Jin's temple. His eyes turned bloodshot. Enduring the pain in her body, she wanted to reach for the fallen handgun beside her. Without thinking, Li Yan picked up the scalpel from the table, preparing to end He Anon. With the aid of a fleeting glimpse, Li Yan barely managed to dodge. As the bullet grazed past, the man immediately met his end. At this moment, He Anon saw his partner killed. His knee collided directly with Hindong's throat. It sent him flying. He had just landed. Another tiger-like leap was aimed at another armed man. The man instinctively fired. He picked up a broken scalpel and threw it at Hindong. The blade plunged straight into his palm. Hindong winced in pain. The gun dropped to the ground. Li Yan pushed off the ground with his legs and lunged forward. He raised his hand to aim. The movements were seamless. At the same time He Anon was going for the gun, Li Yan twisted his wrist and cut the rope. Li Yan drew out the scalpel directly. Cao Cheng's eyes had already lost their luster. Blood gushed from his neck like a fountain. He Anon crouched down. He swiftly rolled and picked up the handgun like lightning, but his eyes were fixed on He Anon. He carefully observed every move he made. 1, 2, 3. As soon as He Andong's voice fell, he threw the handgun forward. I admit defeat today. I'll count to 3. We both drop our guns. How about you let him go? Li Yan agreed immediately. At this moment, everyone stopped arguing. Everyone has their guns pointed at Li Yan. The situation has come to a standstill. After a long time, He Anon, who valued brotherhood, finally compromised and said, fellow townsmen. With a fluid motion, he grabbed the scalpel from the plate. He quickly turned it against Gao Chang. He drove the scalpel directly into his neck. He said to He Anon, I'm pulling out the knife. He immediately retreated for his life. What's the use of spending money if you have no life? Stacks of brand new Hong Kong dollars scattered all over the ground. 2 yellowed rice papers also fell to the floor. Li Yan looked at the current situation. He knew the opportunity had come. He Andong also raised his hand and pressed the gun's muzzle against his forehead. They began to argue. The man was furious. He kicked the leather suitcase off the table onto the floor. He shouted angrily, "What's the use of robbing with a life to spare?" He couldn't believe this was his most trusted big brother. At this moment, a man beside him shouted, "No way, big guy. You're putting your life in his hands, and this is how you treat your brother?" He pulled out a gun and aimed it at Hyeonong. "I hope Xiao Jin stays to get treatment. Wait for the storm to pass. I will break him out of prison myself." Xiao Jin's mouth fell open. The more he listened, the paler he became. A middle-aged man named Gao Chung pointed at the young man lying on the bed and asked, "What about Xiao Jin?" He and Dong quickly walked over. He took Xiao Jin's hand. He told Xiao Jin, "In Hong Kong, not being a pirate won't lead to the death penalty." Told the brothers to move out right away. Li Yan thought to himself, Hyeonong is quite the character, ruthless and decisive. If they don't leave now, once cornered, there's no way to escape. He actually took down 4 bandits with his bare hands while trapped. Just now, Hyeonong suspected that the police found them so quickly. The doctor was the prime suspect. Without hesitation, he immediately sent the doctor away. He said, "Everyone here is a friend. We should help each other out." But as soon as he turned around, he passed away with lingering resentment. This guy is insane. Hyeonong sure is cautious in his actions. The doctor inside, seeing Hyeonong bring in another person, started complaining. Hyeonong smiled and said he'd leave some extra money. The doctor's attitude changed immediately. It's all nonsense when facing firearms. Then Hyeonong pushed Li Yan through twists and turns to an inconspicuous little clinic. As soon as they entered, Hyeonong ordered one of his men to tie Li Yan's hands with a rope. Li Yan thought to himself, even with the system's assistance, Li Yan didn't take any action. He knew that if he made any sudden move, Hyeonong would pull the trigger without hesitation. And his knowledge of Bagwazang, Mingi Fist, along with an 81% martial arts talent, condition, fatigued, minor injury, proficiency in firearms, 39%. Skills are well trained. Comprehensive improvement of combat proficiency. Threat level, Crimson. You can tell at a glance that he's been through long-term training. At this moment, a red light flickers in Li Yan's eyes. A fleeting glance. Target lock-on activated. Hyeonong received the following information. Name, Hyeonong. A black gun barrel was pressed against Li Yan's head. "Forgive me, brother. I didn't want her either." Li Yan pressed her lips together and said nothing. Hyeonong holds the gun steadily. Aishio nodded obediently. Ran off to the street corner holding the cat. Watching Axio leave, Li Yan slowly turned around. Little did she know, Hyeonong behind her had a grim expression. Seeing Aishio's arrival, Li Yan was startled. He hurriedly crouched down and asked Aishio, "Do you have any change on you? Can you help Yen go buy a bag of candy on the street?" Li Yan hurriedly hung up the phone. He laughed and told Hyeonong that his friend had drunk too much, but Hyeonong nearby had already heard everything clearly. Just then, Aishio, who had come out to look for the cat, appeared in front of them. "There is a group of robbers hiding in the apartment where he lives. The police have already been informed. Li Yan should be careful. Try not to go out." Upon hearing this, he came to Hong Kong with a few brothers to see if there were any opportunities to make money. Shangtan was buzzing with excitement. Suddenly, Li Yan's phone rang. It was Hong Gue calling. He reminded Li Yan. There was a noticeable scar on his cheek. The man smiled foolishly and greeted Li Yan. Through the conversation, it was revealed that the man's name was Hyeonong. He and Li Yan were from the same region. The two released their hands at the same time. They both took a step back. The man was in his 30s. He was wearing a worn-out suit. His short hair was neat and tidy. Li Yan instinctively grabbed the person's wrist. Unexpectedly, that person reacted the same way, grabbing Li Yan's wrist. Li Yan was secretly startled. This is the army's capture technique. At this moment, Li Yan just wanted to get home and rest. The whole stage must be free from any sign of affection. While walking through the alley, a hurried figure bumped directly into Li Yan. Lying in bed, I thought about the current situation. Gradually, I drifted into sleep. After spending the whole day with Judy, Li Yan got off the bus. The Kowloon-walled city was as cramped and dark as ever. The violent incidents that often occurred along the roadside no longer seemed strange. He now had 13 points of Yenfu. It seemed like he should exchange for the leaf cell enhancer first. Otherwise, he might have an episode in the ring. That would be troublesome. And there's still no clue about the ancient novel Go Chen Lu. He secretly thought that the pain in his ribs started to hurt out of fear. Lei Honggue drank iodine. The backlash became even worse. He had more than 30,000 on him, plus the 50,000 he won from the boxing match. The intense bone pain made Li Yan faint. After a long while, Li Yan slowly woke up. The bone pain gradually faded. He hurriedly took out some painkillers and swallowed them. Unconscious. They say when countrymen meet, a shot from behind. What you said is absolutely true. Just now, back home, Li Yan was in so much pain she was breaking out in a cold sweat. This bone-deep pain made Li Yan appear somewhat delirious.
Another wave of intense pain hit.
Li Yan could no longer bear it. She collapsed to the ground. Before leaving, the red ghost handed Li Yan a mobile phone
and told her to dress nicely tomorrow. Wait for her call to meet UD.
After parting, Li Yan waited until ENGSUB got off work and took her back home. Let's pack up and go.
The man with the nose ring, feeling as if he was pardoned, apologized to ENGSUB with a smile on his face. Afterwards, he and his gang hurriedly left the hot pot stall.
The two continued eating for a while. Trembling, I said, "Brother Red Oni, you're here too?" Red Oni kept eating and said, "I come here often. It's not easy for the little girl working here.
She doesn't deserve this. So terrifying."
Are they going to kill someone?
The guy with the nose ring glanced over.
It's the Red Oni. So scared, I'm breaking out in a cold sweat.
The sound of the blade cutting through the collar instantly broke Jai Huannan. He collapsed directly onto the ground. A warm stream of bodily fluid flowed out from his pants. At that moment, the red ghost also looked over.
With a sullen expression, he said, "It's the mafia, huh? You like playing the hero so much. If you have the guts, kill me with one strike."
Before the man with the nose ring could finish,
Li Yan suddenly raised his hand and knocked the knife away.
He grabbed the machete and swiftly slashed at the man with the nose ring. At that moment, several young men armed with machetes suddenly stood up around Li Yan.
They all stared fiercely at Li Yan.
At this moment, the man with the nose ring also stood up. He took a machete from one of his men.
Pointing at Li Yan, he said viciously, "You dare to hit someone from Heshenchang?"
Then a size 42 footprint landed on his face. The immense force sent him flying.
Li Yan smiled and stood in front of Ah Xiu.
She softly said, "It's just water."
"May I apologize for the little sister?" A large slap landed on Ah Xiu's face.
Ah Xiu felt pain, tears welling up in her eyes. She trembled uncontrollably.
Just as the man raised his hand again,
his wrist suddenly felt a sharp pain.
At this point, Li Yan also recognized the girl. It's the neighbor, Ah Xiu, who guided her before.
The man with the nose ring waved his hand. Ah Xiu instinctively dodged.
This made the man even angrier. Just as the two were enjoying their conversation, a commotion caught Li Yan's attention.
A young man with a nose ring was pointing at the wet stain on his pants, yelling harshly at a girl about 13 or 14 years old. The girl kept apologizing non-stop.
To have a late-night snack.
Through their interactions over the past few days,
Li Yan also felt that this young man named Honggue was much more personable than he had thought,
and the two of them did not go to upscale places. They went to a hot pot stall in a small alley. After a few rounds of drinks,
"Tomorrow, go accompany Zhu Di, and remind Li Yan to open an account.
He will deposit the prize money from the competition." After taking care of some trivial matters,
he took Li Yan.
The stronger the threat, the deeper the color.
Seeing Li Yan's arrival,
the red ghost immediately took out a stack of cash and handed it to Li Yan. He told him it was from Zhu Di, and that he should buy himself some better clothes. "I must grasp all of them in my hands."
I arrived at the break room.
Li Yan noticed that the people inside were emitting a red glow. This must be a special ability of the Yen talisman.
Anyone hostile to him emits a red glow.
In front of a coward, every step is a hurdle.
I silently repeated these two sentences a few times. I secretly made up my mind. Since I have come here, the 3 million ancient novels in the Gochen Lu might have more.
It was the first time in his life he had killed someone. For someone like Chang Hunan, he felt no pity. He understood this was no place for mercy. Under the fierce tiger's eyes, there are no ravines.
He actually wet his pants from one move by Li Yan. Just now, Li Yan easily defeated Chang Hunan in the ring, and came to the restroom.
Li Yan calmed himself down. At this moment, in the VIP box,
Zhu Di's face was flushed as he watched Li Yan.
His body drenched in sweat. His eyes were filled with a dazed look.
This might be the most cowardly gangster I've ever seen. Chen Hunan fell heavily to the ground, silent and still.
Suddenly, deafening screams and cheers erupted from the crowd below. The crowd in the stands erupted.
They were all shouting for Li Yan to fight again. Before Chen Hunan could get close, Li Yan's right elbow had already viciously slammed into Chen Hunan's face. Immediately after, Li Yan's hands, sharp like swords,
his fists, like a violent storm, pounded fiercely onto Chen Hunan's body. As Li Yan's punches slowly stopped, his left hand gathers 3 fingers together, resembling a bird's beak.
He thrusts like an iron spike toward Cheng's armpit. Cheng Hunan doesn't retreat. Enduring the intense pain, he crashes into Li Yan's chest. He opens his mouth, aiming to bite Li Yan's ear. He swiftly grasped Cheng Hunan's wrist.
He said, "Softness and hardness are passed down."
Cheng is from the Southern Fist White Crane School. Today I'll let you pay respects to the founder. Li Yan's hand forms into a claw. The audience saw Li Yan's performance. They thought this kid is ruthless enough.
I heard he has spent several years in Guangdong. It seems his understanding of Southern martial arts is no weaker than that of his peers from the South.
At this moment, Li Yan's eyes shone with a golden light. A faint smile appeared on Cheng Hunian's lips. Unexpectedly, Li Yan's right leg suddenly shot up, and his slanted shoulder struck Cheng Hunian's jaw hard. The kick made Cheng Hunian's neck tilt back. The right hand directly released Li Yan's arm. Anan felt a bit anxious for him. He knows that all the opponents who were previously grabbed by Cheng Hunian's shoulder were inevitably defeated by his joint techniques. At this moment, it is the crucial moment for victory or defeat. As he seized Li Yan's arm, Cheng Hunan sidestepped to dodge. He twisted at the waist. His left arm crashed directly into Li Yan's arm. His right hand reached out and grabbed Li Yan's right shoulder. At this moment, Zhu Di was fixated on Li Yan in the ring. As the white towel fell to the ground, Li Yan immediately rushed forward. His right hand swept out like lightning. It slammed onto Cheng Hunan's arm used for blocking. The left palm struck towards Cheng Hunan's neck. Skilled in daggers and firearms. Mastery of Okinawan Goju-ryu karate. And tonight, before Li Yan, he has already won 3 matches. 3 opponents are either severely injured or dead. Her face was somewhat pale. Wearing a training uniform, her expression was indifferent. This man's name was Cheng Hunan. He was a wanted serial killer from the East. She'll firmly establish herself in Class 6. She has to put on a great performance. Only then would he have a chance to get 3 million from this billionaire woman. Standing in the ring, Li Yan looked at her last opponent of the day. Then Red Ghost pulled Li Yan to the ring. He even joked that Zhu Dijie is quite fragrant. Grabbing onto that thigh is sure to bring success. Li Yan knows that if she wins today, he whispered, if you can hold on, sister will definitely take good care of you. Li Yan's temples throbbed slightly, but he still wore a smile on his face. You can't tell at all. Hearing Li Yan say this, Zhu Di revealed a sweet smile. He stood up directly from the sofa. Leaning forward, he almost pressed against Li Yan. Before Hong Gue could speak, Li Yan chuckled and said, you're joking, Sister Zhu Di. Hong Gue is my boss. If the boss has to play personally, I might as well jump into the sea. Just not sure if you're all show. Don't go up there and get knocked down after just a couple of rounds. I'd lose face, you know. How about you play, Hong? No matter how much, sis, I've got your back. Then hurriedly pulled Li Yan over. Li Yan forced a smile. Greeted. Zhu Di looked Li Yan up and down. He softly said, not bad looking. Since her husband's death, Zhu Di has become infatuated with violence and bloodshed. Now she has become the major financier of the Dragon City arena. Hong Gue immediately put on an innocent face and explained that he was off to find her new rookie. Do you know I've come to Longcheng? Are you deliberately avoiding me? This woman is named Zhu Di. Her husband was a gentleman in his lifetime. His net worth exceeded 10 billion. 2 slightly curled red lips. Countless romantic feelings. After seeing the Red Ghost come in, the woman said with a dissatisfied tone, Red Ghost, your dead ghost finally shows up. After that, Hong Gue led Li Yan into a luxurious private room. Inside, they saw a woman in her 30s lounging lazily on the sofa. With big, wavy curls, long legs and a slim waist. Charming phoenix eyes. Those who come to the service building to see the spring, the wealthy and noble, just one night, will cost at least $1 million or 2. But if you want to gain a foothold here, you must find a big sponsor to back you up. Let's go to the big venue. After speaking, the Red Ghost tossed away the cigarette butt and took Li Yan to the service building. The service building is located on Longjin Road, a towering dark blue building. Red Oni is leaning against the ropes. He gestures for Li Yan to kick down. He says, if you keep fighting like this, an idiot wouldn't fight you. Come with me, it's your last match today. Knocked him unconscious directly. This is already the 5th fighter he's defeated today. It's very clear now. Li Yan is not at 4th tier level. It's hard for him to stay in the 4th tier anymore. The male lead is actually being pursued by this seductive and charming wealthy woman. Just now, Li Yan's palm came down like a knife, striking right on her opponent's head. Then, with another punch, she sent her opponent flying. The wooden box opened, revealing a piece of light yellow rice paper. It depicts a vividly lifelike Kuei bull. It turns out to be a fragment of the Gochen Lu Ben. Can you believe it? Recalling today's experiences, he slowly fell asleep. In the middle of the night, at a gambling den, a middle-aged man, red-eyed from losing, took out a box from his pocket. He asked how much it was worth. A woman's voice suddenly came from the nearby room. The little girl hurriedly bid farewell to Li Yan and ran back home. Li Yan opened the door. He lay down directly on the bed. The little girl showed a look of wariness and a hint of fear in her eyes, but she still took Li Yan to her place. To show her gratitude, Li Yan casually handed the little girl a piece of candy. Just when the little girl hesitated about whether to take it, the answer the Red Ghost gave made Li Yan feel that gathering 300 points of Yen Fu Dian within a month would not be easy. The dark alley was filled with a disgusting smell. While searching for her dorm, Li Yan encountered a girl around 13 or 14 years old. Little sister, do you know where room 413 is? In response to Li Yan's inquiry, All the behind-the-scenes bosses of the business in Longcheng are Tai Sui. As long as you follow Tai Sui well, you can have money and women, whatever you want. However, what Li Yan cares about is not these. What he needs most right now is money. He asked the Red Ghost about the prize for the fight. Either step onto the boxing ring. Here, the committee is everything. And the Tai Sui is the executive member of the committee. In this ring, it's basically about getting by with Tai Sui. At this moment, on the rooftop, Red Ghost is telling Li Yan the story of Dragon City. Dragon City is notorious for being lawless. Every year, countless fugitives escape here. They either become enforcers. I must accumulate enough extension points here. That is, I have to earn enough money. At night, Dragon City is full of lights and debauchery. Gangs are everywhere. The air is filled with a decadent atmosphere. Can cure one's own illness. The purchasing rights gifted by MO. Each extension event can only be activated once. After 3 times, it will disappear. And I don't have enough time to wait for 3 extension periods. Hematopoietic cell booster pill. It seems this is what that fat guy promised would cure his illness. One requires 10 points. It can keep his illness under control. Another 300 points are needed. Each use consumes 1 extension point. You can also spend 10 expansion points to purchase permanently. When he saw the 2 items below, Li Yan's eyes lit up with surprise. Hematopoietic cell enhancer. After gaining 5 extension points, he finally unlocked the extra purchase permissions. A fleeting glance can obtain personal information of others. There is a chance to uncover their weaknesses. He said, by the way, Master Zhou, does the 50,000 yuan your brother Zhou mentioned still count? Xiao Zhou was taken aback. He nodded awkwardly. At this moment, a long-lost task window appeared in Li Yan's eyes. Today isn't satisfying. Wait until I establish myself in Longqing's arena. Then we'll be good. We'll have a good fight. Li Yan nodded. Then he left with a group of his underlings. Xiao Zhou walked up to Li Yan. He cupped his hands and said, Master Li, there aren't many traditional martial artists fighting in the Longqing ring. Then there's no problem. Xiao Zhou smiled slightly. He shouted Brother Zhou towards Hua Shanjiu. How could Hua Shanjiu not understand Xiao Zhou's meaning? He casually said, do as you wish. The red demon drooped his eyelids, looked at Xiao Zhou, and laughed. Then you have to start from class 1. As long as the committee recognizes that your scores are close, and there's someone betting. With a leap, he jumped off the stage, and said to the Red Ghost, isn't it true, that as long as I follow the rules and step into the ring, then you can fight him? Who knows what was going through his mind? Listening to the conversation between the two, Xiao Zhou knew in his heart that if he didn't do something now, today's events would likely end badly. I don't care about anything else. Today, your man stepped on stage, which means you're causing trouble in Dragon City. Hua Shanjiu's expression was terrifyingly grim. He said nothing. Nor do I want to break Longqing's rules. Just do me this favor, and let them have a match. Red Demon took a deep drag of his cigarette. He slowly shook his head and said, rules are rules. Hua Shanjiu smiled slightly. He glanced at Li Yan. He softly said, then I'll be direct. My disciple, Xiao Zhou, has always wanted to spar with a Bagua master. I, Hua Shanjiu, don't want to cause trouble. We're just making a living off the ring. But you treat my ring like a chicken farm. Come and go as you please, up and down at will. That's breaking the rules. The young man named Soul Ghost gently lit a cigarette and took a puff. The grudge between He Lianqing and Mr. Wu has nothing to do with us. Are we with Tai Sui asterisk? Hua Shanjiu was somewhat displeased. His expression darkened. He pushed up his glasses and said, what's going on? Are the 5 elders of your committee going to turn against us? Can't we even watch the match with Lian Shangdao Longcheng anymore? Li Yan finally found a way to cure his terminal illness. But the price was that he had to earn 3 million in a month. Just now, Red Demon stopped the match between Li Yan and Zhou Weida with a single word. Regarding the actions of the Soul Ghost, Li Yan also quickly stepped back a few paces. A red-haired young man in a leather jacket slowly walked over with his gang. Hua Shanjiu sat back in his seat, his cold eyes fixed on the red-haired youth as he said, Red Demon, what are you doing here? Then Li Yan moved like a ghost. She charged forward. In an instant, she was in front of Zhou Rantao. Stop! This sudden shout immediately attracted everyone's attention. He slowly said, you're quite arrogant. Li Yan smiled slightly. She softly said, I just didn't expect it. A small-time thug unexpectedly turns out to be a master of Du Family Fist. I'm going to get serious now. I'm secretly shocked. This Du Family boxing is quite interesting. Indeed, they are experts. It seems I underestimated this city fortress before. After the two separated, Xiao Zhou coldly stared at Li Yan. He released the force of his elbow and then retracted it. His right fist directly struck Li Yan's face. The fierce wind from the punch lifted Li Yan's hair. Li Yan hurriedly blocked the attack with his palm. His body retreated with the force. An elbow struck directly at Li Yan's chest.
At the same time, a right leg kicked out, attacking Li Yan's abdomen.
Li Yan reacted extremely quickly.
He blocked the elbow strike with his left arm. His right hand swiftly grabbed the opponent's right leg at the small elbow. His discomfort caused cold sweat to bead on his forehead. He gently said, "Hejian."
Li Yan looked at Li Yan's attitude. A flicker of anger flashed in Xiao Zhou's eyes.
A figure suddenly approached and jumped directly from the stands onto the ring.
He cupped his hands toward Li Yan
and softly said, "Du Jia Quan. Zhou Weitao has awakened." Li Yan frowned slightly. He ended up with 5 broken ribs.
Right ear deafness. For many years after that, I always hoped to spar with the successor of Baguazhang. To avenge this grievance, Xiao Zhou stood up. He knew that Xiao Zhou wasn't just someone who had learned the basics for 3 to 5 years. He had been training in martial arts for over a decade. He was more than capable of running a school and accepting disciples. But Xiao Zhou, in his early years, had a sparring match with a martial artist of the Cheng style Baguazhang. However, feeling the intensity of the earlier match, the sensation of each punch landing,
was proof that she was still alive. At this moment, Hua Shanjiu looked at the young man beside him and smiled. "Xiao Zhou, I know you can't wait.
Go ahead and have some fun." Li Yan had a look of understanding.
She wiped her nose with her hand. More blood trickled from her nose. At that moment, Li Yan was not in good condition. Her body was suffering from high fever, bleeding, and inflammation. The fat man was helpless. He could only remind Li Yan that his wife was the spokesperson for Lianqing.
"You need to fight well. Take a few punches.
Lying on the ground, you can get 50,000 yuan.
Are you out of your mind?
I spent 50,000 yuan on this banquet, not to watch those trash fight.
The committee has made it clear that outsiders are not allowed on stage."
Before the fat man could speak, Hua Shanjiu kicked him off the stage. The middle-aged man who had previously made things difficult for Li Yan approached this person with a flattering smile and said, "Brother Zhou,
are you happy and willing to gamble?
You can choose any fighter here, but having your own person go up is against the rules." Brother Zhou suddenly laughed, "You fool." Upon seeing the prompt, Li Yan immediately changed his mind. He promised to come to the competition himself. The goal here is to cure the illness. This Yanfu classic should be useful. I can only stay for a month. No amount of money can be taken with you. Just when I was about to refuse, a prompt suddenly appeared in my line of sight. A valuable item worth 50,000 yuan can be exchanged for 5 points of extension. Such items can only be exchanged after you confirm ownership. He was wearing a floral shirt. His chest was open, revealing a tattoo of a demon inside. Judging by 1980s prices, this 50,000 must be a fortune. Next time you'll have to step down. Does anyone have the guts to fight my guy? No matter who wins or loses, this 50,000 yuan is yours. After saying that, he pulled out a thick stack of cash from his chest.
Li Yan looked at the man. Who's next?
Suddenly, a burst of laughter came from the crowd. It was the man who had just been counting on Li Yanlu from the stands.
In Longqing's boxing ring, a match only opens if someone places a bet. If no one does,
the host stared blankly at the tea and snacks on the ground.
After calming down, he finally announced Li Yan's victory. But Li Yan had no intention of leaving the stage. She gently asked, "Aren't we supposed to fight through the levels?" Directly shattered Chache's knee with a single blow. Chache fell directly to the ground. The constant wailing, and on stage, those who lost at gambling began to curse loudly. Li Yan coldly looked at the referee and said, "Announce it." He was led by the guide Mo into the world of Yanfu. Upon entering the world of Yanfu, the first challenge he faced was the Muay Thai champion. Just now, Li Yan. A cracking sound was heard. Chache's knee was shattered by Li Yan's kick. This man is the martial arts prodigy Li Yan, a once-in-a-century talent. But a month ago, he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. In order to cure his illness, Chai carefully guarded his face, blocked the punch. Li Yan delivered a powerful kick with his right leg, aimed at Chai. Chai could only endure the intense pain and lean sideways to block it. A man in a floral shirt muttered, 18 palms. Zissou passed the test. At this moment, Chai shakily stood up. Li Yan dashed forward in a quick stride, throwing a straight punch at Chai's face. He kicked fiercely at the back of his knee. A wave of sharp pain hit. Chai's legs buckled. He knelt directly on the ring. In the front row of the stands, his right hand lunged directly at Chai's throat. Chai didn't expect Li Yan to be so fast. Instinctively, he dodged. Li Yan passed straight through Chai's right side, moving directly behind him. Li Yan suddenly steps back. Chai follows with another vicious and fast straight punch. Li Yan sidesteps slightly to dodge the attack. He raises his left hand, deflecting Chai's right punch. Just find a soft target and hit a few times. The real main event is later. The match begins. Chai charges in fiercely, starting off directly with a shoulder bump. He directly pointed at the chosen Li Yan to come on stage. Li Yan walked slowly towards the boxing ring. He noticed that there was a faint red glow on Chai. Chai looked at Li Yan, appearing somewhat weak. This is just the first match. He was trained by NIFO, the boxing champion known as the Southern Comet. Suddenly, a wave of cheers erupted from the crowd. A dark-skinned, muscular man stepped into the ring. It was none other than the fighter Chache. Suddenly, Cha Kai seemed to feel Li Yan's gaze. If that fat guy really could take me to Hong Kong in 1986, there's no reason my illness can't be cured. Let's assess the situation first. Meanwhile, the host on stage was still energetically promoting the upcoming fighter. The fighter's name was Chache, a middle-aged man in a suit. At that moment, the man was staring at Li Yan, cursing and urging her to get in the ring and fight. Li Yan didn't say anything, still thinking. Just as Li Yan was thinking, someone suddenly appeared behind him, raised a hand and struck at him. Li Yan quickly grabbed the opponent's fist. She turned around and saw Mo's gift. Is it the purchase access that fat guy gave me? Inspiration talent at 81%. Looking at a deaf. Still room for improvement. As long as any one of these conditions is fulfilled, the Salt Charm event will officially begin. However, the maximum stay here is only 1 month, and you must not lose the match. Once you lose the match, you'll be sent back to the original world. It seems that he is now in Hong Kong's Kowloon Walled City in 1986. And there are 3 requirements to complete this task. 1. Defeat the 7th type on the 9 Dragons Spring platform. 2. Obtain any fragment of the ancient novel Gochen. 3. Awaken the bewitching bird from the ancient novel Gochen. Feel free to cause a ruckus. At the same time, a task window appeared in Li Yan's pupils. Looking at the dialogue box, Li Yan carefully analyzed it. Where's that fat guy? Suddenly, a voice rang out. Lord Walker, welcome to Yanfu. We thought you were ready for a new identity. It won't raise anyone's suspicion. The cold darkness swallowed Li Yan once again. Open your eyes. A boxing ring comes into view. The chaotic shouts around and the pungent smell make him feel a bit disoriented. This is an underground fight. His head was covered in blood. At this moment, a strange voice echoed again. Awaken him, my walking. Li Yan couldn't make a sound. He kept asking in his mind, who are you? Fiery red blood enveloped Li Yan's body. Everything before her turned crimson. And at that moment, she finally saw one of those mysterious shadows clearly. His whole body was locked in iron chains. The wings behind him were also pierced by iron chains. At that moment, Li Yan felt herself endlessly falling. Strange and bizarre images flashed before her eyes. Black iron chains pierced the sky. A mysterious, ancient palace. Countless powerful and mysterious figures. Just how strong is this man? Terminally ill. Yet he could still shatter the knee of the Thai boxing champion. Just now, Li Yan was engulfed by the black wave behind Fatty. His expression turned unusually dark and solemn. Then let's do it. Suddenly, a black wave like a deep abyss surged behind Fatty. It engulfed the terrified Li Yan completely. A faint, ethereal voice echoed, welcome to the world of salt service. But this is a road of no return. Li Yan smiled slightly. Sounds way better than waiting to die. Let's hear it. The fat guy grinned. Everything that happened today feels strange. After a moment of thought, he directly asked, what do you need me to do? Wang Yang spread his hands. Just say it, why not give it a try and see? But it's not through a bone marrow match like you think. That's too childish. I can offer you something better. Li Yan believes there's no such thing as a free lunch. Wang Yang was stunned for a moment. Then he burst out laughing. This guy is really funny. His expression then turned serious. He looked at Li Yan and said, I can save your life. You can call me Wang Yang. Or you can call me by another name. Li Yan gave him a glance. He smiled slightly. Want some dumplings? The fat man glanced and asked, what about the woman? Noticing Li Yan's somewhat unfriendly gaze, the fat man clarified that he had nothing to do with those 2 people. The monster just used the man's thought to greet you. Let me introduce myself. People say the Li family of Hejian excels in both spear and sword. I didn't expect your grappling skills to be so sharp either. Li Yan suddenly noticed the darkness behind the man. Without a trace of light, there was an indescribable eeriness. Suddenly, Li Yan felt a wave of dizziness, and passed out. When Li Yan woke up again, a short, chubby man appeared in front of him, and the monster from before had vanished. Sensing the killing intent from behind, Li Yan twisted his waist, and delivered a flying kick. The tremendous force twisted the monster's head several times, and it collapsed motionless to the ground. Seeing that the monster didn't react for a long time, Li Yan let out a breath of relief. She turned to find her phone. Unexpectedly, at that moment, the monster suddenly picked up. He opened his mouth wide and bit toward Li Yan. The atmosphere was very eerie. Li Yan reached out and grabbed the monster's shoulder. With a twist, she pushed the monster down to the ground. With a loud crack, the monster's right hand was brutally twisted off by Li Yan. The monster lunged at her again. Li Yan immediately struck at the monster's joint. She shattered the joint. The monster, losing its balance, knelt before Li Yan. Their eyes met. The immense force sent Li Yan flying away. Li Yan was secretly shocked. This guy is definitely not human. Before Li Yan could get up, a decayed, rotten face appeared in front of Li Yan. Li Yan's pupils shrank sharply. It was actually the driver who had just left. Suddenly, a fierce leg whip attacked Li Yan. Li Yan raised her arm to block. Looking at the faint red on his hand, Li Yan chuckled to himself. He no longer felt like keeping the shop open. Just as he was about to close up, suddenly, a hand blocked the shutter door. Only you, senior brother, have fully nurtured this malice. No matter what you decide in the end, I hope that senior brother's anger hasn't subsided yet. After saying that, he turned around with the driver and left. Anger? He took out a business card and gently placed it on the table, and softly said, my grandfather used to say, martial artists feel an itch in their heart first. A trace of malice, among so many younger generations, that he had been diagnosed with leukemia and didn't have much time left. He was afraid he could not help him. Facing Li Yan's attitude, Lei Jing was somewhat displeased, but he didn't say anything. According to their generation, Li Yan should be her senior apprentice. Because of Grandpa's passing, this time, he wanted to ask Li Yan to return to Guangdong with him to serve as a consultant for the Martial Arts Association. But Li Yan directly refused his request, and told Lei Jing. She indicated that she was indeed Li Yan. With confirmation, the woman began to introduce herself. The girl's name was Lei Jing. She was a director of the Chinese Martial Arts Association, and her grandfather, Lei Hongsheng, was Li Yan's nominal master. But a month ago, he was diagnosed with acute leukemia. Now, he can only spend his remaining time in this rundown little shop. At this moment, a young girl walks in from outside. She softly asked, are you Mr. Li Yan? Li Yan gently looked up at the woman. This man was once a notorious figure in the martial arts world known as the Beast of Hejian. Now, he has fallen to the position of a shabby video store owner. The man's name is Li Yan. In his youth, he sought out masters from all over to practice martial arts. He even made a fearsome name for himself in the martial world.